All right, I'm going to call this meeting, I'm going to call this February 15th, 2022 special meeting of the Hancock County Commissioners to order. We're meeting remotely via Zoom. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
I'm going to move to approve the agenda as presented with the exception of adding 3 items before 6A. The first is work from home request from probate. The second, new hire part-time clerk probate. And the third, Sealander, new contract ADA ramp for sheriff's office.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any other adjustments? Hearing none, the agenda is in order. Let's see, next item, do we have any public comment? Nope, I don't see anybody. All right, thank you very much.
Chair, no.
Yep. Next item.
I'm going to move to approve the minutes of the February 1st regular meeting as presented.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next up is our AAP broadband report. John,
Hey, good morning.
good morning.
Morning.
So I believe in your packet, you have a couple of documents. And I can share a screen if you want to go over the kind of the current status of the projects that we've done.
John, while we're talking about that, we don't have our broadband books. Scott, could you quickly add up the value of the Castine, Frenchboro, Stonington, and Sorrento app assessments? Just to tell us what the value of, we're kind of using that as a benchmark for each community. I'm just curious as to what those.
Commissioner, it's approximately 225,000. I did that earlier today.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I should have known that you're right on top of that.
No, I didn't put it in the report, but I knew I thought we'd start talking about it a little bit. That's approximate, just to give you an idea.
Yeah, I'll double check, but I trust his math, so. Yeah.
Well, even though we last meeting we didn't adopt that as a definite. When we're considering, I mean, there's 225 that we can assess to other projects over and above what the app assessment was, correct, John?
Excuse me, Commissioner, I didn't quite catch it.
Well, in other words, we've got 225,000. We're not going to kind of dedicate to communities that can be used for other communities that we may exceed their app.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Understanding you hadn't adopted that. I get you. Yes. And did my screen, is the Excel spreadsheet shown?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we can sort this in different orders, but just to give you an idea of, kind of what's been going on. We've added a legend to give you an idea there. That may change a little bit as we, come up with different statuses for some of these projects, but it gives you an idea that everybody has been contacted and been engaged with in some way. Had conversations, some good conversations with some of these folks, been to a few more broadband committee meetings. So there's activity going on, and I'll say these active engagement towns. Obviously, you saw the ones that we had conversations, they confirmed they weren't going. There's one in here, Eastbrook, I just wanted to point out. So their quick conversation with CCI that we had, and we'll follow up with them. There appears to be a project that's either completed or to be completed in Eastbrook. So we're just finalizing that conversation with them as well. And then I did speak to CCI yesterday because they're the ones that are part of this NTIA grant, and they're hoping to hear within 15 days. I'll use the term that it's been federal government red tape for a while. This was a decision that was starting in November, December last year, and they're still going on with making the decision on awarding that grant. So just to give you an idea on that.
John, you talked about this, I think, last meeting, but Union River does not offer broadband services. So those towns are
Oh, no, they do. They do, Commissioner. Yeah, they actually have they have a good fiber to the premise network. So the conversations that we need to have with these towns is kind of more along the line of, is it working? Are you satisfied? Do you need expansion? Does it cover every area? So,
You talked here about needing a confirmation that they're not requesting county funds.
correct.
As opposed to they are. In other words. they
Yeah,
are-
so also we can go on without talking, some more conversations as assumptions, right? So we can say they have fiber to the premise, which they do from Union River. But the question is it 100% coverage? Is there money that needs to be spent to, expand or help in some way this network or this coverage for unserved or underserved, which is what our intent.
I guess I'm being too picky with the wording, but the fact that you said they will not be requesting doesn't mean that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I should have said they may not be. Sorry.
And they may be. In other words.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, we can't take them off the list yet. Sorry.
I got you. All right.
Hey, John, so the NTIA grant award with these different towns, is it all one grant that they've done? Like, explain to me a little bit, like, is this each individual town applying for that grant, or is it exactly what's happening there?
The state of Maine worked with Consolidated specifically on this grant for these towns. And so they put out to NTIA. So NTIA came out with a grant process, pre all this, additional money last year. And NTIA, just not to confuse you, because NTIA is also going to be the people that are going to be running the next grant round. Well, one of the next grants coming from the feds, right? So the infrastructure grant is going to be run by NTIA. The next ARP fund that we're getting is money. The Treasury money is going to be obviously run by Treasury. So you've got 100 million plus coming to the state from Treasury, and then you got another 100 million plus coming to the state that's going to be run by the NTIA.
Okay.
And this one, this is all pre those funding. This is a different grant round that NTIA came out with last year, using some of the federal ARP money, and said, okay, let's go out and try to solve broadband initially. So the state of Maine Connectivity Authority of Maine went with CCI. There's a variety of these that are out there, but this specific one for these towns is through CCI with Connect Maine, as well as NTIA is going to award this, but we're not award it for them in the next, we're told the next couple of weeks.
John, that's is it Brooksville Blue Hill that has a joint?
Correct. Yep. Yes.
Is that one grant under two towns?
That is one that they, yep. And we're going to show you actually when we get to the mapping portion of today's presentation. We'll show you what that kind of looks like.
Let's do it.
Okay. We also had in your packet some survey results. We get a few more every week. And again, as I talk to these towns, obviously some of them already have done surveys. Some have, as you saw, done projects. So they're not really pushing these surveys. The ones that, the people that are starting out or have different versions of projects are the ones that are pushing it. But it gives us an idea. It kind of aligns with, what we see in other areas about, when they're not satisfied, what does it mean? How, why? Certainly you can see that slow and reliable service are always big. And then cost. That's what we keep talking about, right? I have it, it might be available, but I can't afford it. That's a challenge. And then we always like to just kind of, this is why we're doing this, right? All of these functions of how are people using it, right? It's not just for, as we say, video gaming anymore, right? There's definitely working from home and education, as we know, but certainly in Maine with aging population, it's that telehealth and aging in place, and telepsychiatry, and how can we help all of these people, with good broadband internet.
Thank you.
Good. Any questions on these?
No, but I think next time, like today, I don't actually see that anything on the surveys in the packet. So if you could email it to me, that'd be good.
Yeah,
Oh,
this spreadsheet was not in the packet that I saw.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. We'll do that.
Rebecca, you are maintaining a broadband book for us, and this information will all be in a broadband book, correct?
Yes, yep, this will be in there. Yep.
Thank you. All right, John, what's next?
So now I'm going to turn it over to Jason for Mission Broadband, and we're going to do a little, we call it a helicopter ride. So we're going to give you a 30,000-foot view of some map, so how some maps look for broadband in your area. And Jason, now I just need your help. I don't see, how do I stop sharing? Or does Rebecca just cut me off?
There should be a red button somewhere that says stop share.
That's what I was looking for.
Should be down in the bottom middle, JD, I think, or at the top of the spreadsheet screen you were sharing.
Yeah, it's not there.
Any of your grandchildren there to help you?
Yeah, that's what I need.
Want me to run
Yeah,
down the
let's-
hall?
Yeah, just take it over. Just take it over, Jason, if you want to.
It won't let me. It's different than Teams. I have to actually wait for you to release it. If you'd like, I can.
What if
Yeah.
he just closes that spreadsheet?
I'll see if I can do that on this end.
There you go.
Think I can do it now.
Thank you.
Perfect. Is that working?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. So we've got really today, we're just kind of focusing on 3 different areas. Good morning, commissioners, by the way. My name is Jason Gay with Mission Broadband. A brief overview. We are using information or reviewing information that Connect Maine is providing. Connect Maine is working with service providers, and service providers are providing the underpinnings or the data that they're using to illustrate, which I think is good. In some ways, I think it's a little bit more resolute than census block data. We can talk briefly about that as well. But on this screen I'm sharing, you'll see at the street level there color code representations, and green is according to the data that they're using that was collected October 21, represents that speeds of less than 100 by 100 are available, and the red areas are less than 10 by 1. So I don't see a whole lot of yellow. Yellow is less than 50, orange is less than 25. So that's pretty much their standard legend, if you will, throughout Connect Maine. But I do think it's good data in large because there's not a lot of other better data available. But we can talk more, and as we get into the plan for Swans Island, you'll see that what's on the ground and what people are reporting for actuals don't won't always and don't align with what we see here. So
Jason,
additionally, sure, go ahead.
Excuse me, is the 50 by 10, is that good? What's the quality?
So yellow, I mean, green, I guess the scale is green is best, yellow is better than orange, and red is not great at all. I think the goal ultimately, given the nature of needs these days, is to get as close to 100 realistically, over 100 as you can or better. I mean, that's where really it's going with all of.
And we don't have any hundreds on Swans Island, correct?
Well, according to the map, there is some the green lines, if you can see them. Hopefully you can see my screen okay.
You call it
Just
100.
top plot, those are very, very optimistic, those green lines.
Yeah, and that's the reality, right? So I'm sorry, it's less than 100 by 100, let me restate, and at least 50. So my notes are incorrect a little bit on that, so apologize.
I see. So somewhere between those.
That's correct. And then where I was headed after the Connect Maine site, you can see that if you go to the Broadband Coalition speed test results, unfortunately, in my opinion, the data here is so thin, the numbers just don't really support. But occasionally you'll see a good speed test, but in large in this area, not a lot of supporting evidence that there's an 81 meg down, but it's on the University of Maine system. It's a little bit unorthodox.
Not
right?
residential, right? Not residential.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, and on the prior map,
Yep.
those were reds or those are oranges?
These are red. Sorry if
Okay.
there's a, yeah. So these would be, anything that's red is less than 10/1, or I would say non-existent, really.
Okay, because you also spoke of orange. There's no orange on this
There,
map.
there is not. If you look at the legend, there's a color for it. Some of the other maps that we might look
Okay.
at may have that represented, but it isn't
Okay.
on this map.
I just
don't see
wanted
it.
to make sure that, because sometimes screen colors aren't the best. Okay.
You got it. Exactly.
And if I can jump in real quick, Jason, leave this map
Sure.
there. That's, commissioners, that's part of what we've been talking about with mapping and the self-reporting and, where do we get the data from? Tom's on from Swans Island and, Lemoyne can talk about it. Everybody can talk about it. The maps don't always accurately say, okay, what's available for residential? As you saw, one of the things that was on there was university. Well, of course, they have a higher bandwidth. They're paying for it, but residents don't have that ability to have that higher bandwidth either available and or affordable. So that's what these projects are really hitting at is, okay, these are unserved, underserved, and then the new term is least served, which you really see in Brooklyn Sedgwick. So this allows us to say, okay, we look at these projects and we'll show it on the Moyne one where we map up against the actual carrier's map and help us understand, okay, this is what we're starting to see, and the carrier map matches a little bit, but we'll also see that the carrier even shows stuff that's not on the Connect Maine map that says, yeah, we really don't serve this area. And that's why we're trying to serve this area. So
Okay, so Jason.
Yes.
The fact that University of Maine has a better system is that there is a specific line that runs to them that nobody else has access to. I don't quite understand.
that's correct. That is
Oh,
correct, Commissioner. Yeah. So the university, and the state of Maine has done a good job. They've got, and the university folks have been involved on the school and library project as well. So anything like that has, direct fiber connectivity that's being paid for federally, through other programs. And then the university and large businesses just pay to have, fiber lines run to them specifically.
Excuse my ignorance here too, but is this brought to the island via like microwave, or is it a hard line under the ocean?
It's brought to the island by microwave.
It's microwave to the island?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a site and then the wiring from that site to the University of Maine site, is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually the town library and the town school that it's coming to, but it's probably labeled as university for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been our experience. Those are very typically cost prohibitive for anyone else to have a circuit like that. The other thing is JD mentioned the map that's in the presentation. I don't have it up here for Lemoyne. You'll see that is direct from the carrier, or as a result of working with the carrier, yields an even different story than the one that's painted here by Connect Maine. So I should have created a side-by-side. I apologize, I didn't, but.
Is the other one worse, Jason?
Yes, I think that it's clear that there is definite representation by the carrier that the coverage is not as good as this map represents, which is surprising a little bit to me, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. And again, here's a look at the speed tests in that area, and you can see that anything that's good is pretty much in this really, what I would call denser area provided by Charter, which is a cable service. Otherwise, not much. At least in terms of speed tests, they're kind of few and far. And then go ahead.
In that Lemoyne map, I see, I'll call them, I guess those are blue lines. Yeah, I'm looking at the one that was in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
And I see that there's also a lot of new subdivisions and I know about them because one of them is a neighbor to my daughter. When they talk about something like this, there's room for expansion as residential development happens. Is that part of the picture here, John? Is that?
Yeah,
You
so.
understand my question?
I
There's room
do.
for expansion, in other words.
Yeah, I do. And in any of these broadband projects, Greenfield is different, and that's kind of what Fawns Island is going to be. We'll look at that in a few minutes, but TDS, the phone company, is going to expand to kind of what we call the Greenfield fiber, brand new everywhere. Brooklyn Sedgwick, kind of the same idea. This one, is a set carrier in place that wants to just expand and say, hey, you know what, there just has not been, it's return on investment. As we said, there has not been a critical mass that we can expand to. And so these outliers kind of sit there for years, and the network can expand. And that's the good news, right? You can expand the network, but it costs money and, return on investment.
I think if to answer that briefly with respect to the technology, there is a limit in some of the current DOCSIS standards. And I know the cable companies are scrambling to address that, because fiber is still considered a more, I would say, a more future-proof. But in terms of what the thresholds are, it's not a significant issue at this point, I would say.
Okay.
That's helpful. The third area that we're focused on, or just wanted to take a kind of look at, as you can see here, the Sedgwick Brooklyn area is pretty much non-supported.
Starving.
There's some DSL in the area, but it is very, very slow. So JD, did you want me to switch to the queue just to get a look at the 477 data that we plotted?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we use a open source GIS software platform that enables us to use any readily available shapefile data if we have it, if providers give it to us, or if we're able to collect data points for addresses. The yellow dots here represent publicly available address information. It's dated, but it gives us a semi-close representation, at least in terms of density and where it exists.
So those are just, Jason, real quick. So when you said that, those are addresses, right? Those are homes.
Correct.
Parcels of.
We don't know. We don't know names. We don't know mailing addresses. We just know physical addresses where residents are, presumably. So it gives us a little bit of a starting point. Go ahead.
So in other words, it's a physical address with an IP address or something like that.
Well, they're actually residents or addresses for typically aligned with parcel data and not associated with internet use at all. They're literally just demographic markers for us to give us a sense of population when we don't have it from a superior source. If a town gives us an entire tax base or the parcel data and home locations are available, we'll use that instead. But
okay, but so the question is, that address is being served with broadband?
We do not know that.
Okay.
This one right here is, Commissioner, is just address, just to give you an idea of a baseline address layer. And then we're going to add to, we're going to go next. We're going to add to that and show you some different layers of.
Right.
Okay. I was jumping ahead. Sorry.
No worries. Good question.
Plenty of time.
Good question. So if I zoom in on the Sedgwick Brooklyn area as an example, the layer that I've got turned on here and it's partially populated is, if you're familiar with the RDOF awards, we overlay the RDOF award data just to give us a sense of where those programs are aimed. And you can certainly kind of see, and we can do a deeper dive analysis to determine, using the demographic information as to whether or not, how many potential homes may be affected. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, Jason, I think go ahead and shut that one off and turn
it on.
I'll to give an idea of.
I just wanted to make sure they knew we had that as a data point. The other data that we use is the FCC 477 deployment data that's filed. Unfortunately or fortunately, the data is limited because it's aligned with census block boundaries, and census blocks, as you may or may not know, vary greatly in terms of their geography, and it's a kind of a, I would say, it's a Census Bureau decision as to whether the census block bound where they lie and how they're shaped. So I'll just speak to it briefly and say that if a service provider files a deployment data report per their regulatory requirements, and they have or are providing service or can provide service in a geography that intersects with a census block, they are to report their highest speed that they offer and the technology for that area, and it gets, the entire census block gets labeled as having that service available, and that's the drawback, right? It might just be one or two addresses or a corner of a census block that fiber intersects with, and the entire census block gets quote unquote lit up with a brand of being available for service with that provider's technology. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions on that?
Really makes it kind of, I won't say worthless, but it's certainly questionable.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, it paints a picture for us. I look at it in two ways. I sort it by provider so that I can kind of get a sense of, if I'm going at it saying, okay, where is, charter, and I can turn on that layer, or I sort it by technology. So if I just wanted to see, where fiber and cable are, for example, and irrespective of the provider. So there's two ways to look at it. But the quick view here, if I just turn on the technology layer, using cable and fiber as really our determination as to whether or not there's future-proof broadband in the area, you can clearly see that we're framing these two areas, north and south, but there is literally no recorded record of, as of the data that was currently available, which is December of 2020, mind you, for FCC. This is a largely unserved, in our opinion, or underserved, I should say, area, but largely unserved, Sedgwick and Brooklyn. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, then Jason, to that end too, and Connect Maine has actually added a term called least served, which is, not even 25/3. That's
like
this
10 over 1 or whatever. So.
Yeah, 10 over 1. Yeah.
So we're happy to draft any, we can take snapshots, screenshots, we can zero in on, if you had a query that you wanted to look at, certainly won't belabor this call with it, but that's just a brief overview of some of the analysis we do. And as I said, it certainly paints the right picture for supporting the projects to build this area out, I would say.
It helps us commissioners as we, we call it vetting these projects. When they come to us and say, okay, what does this look like? And you'll see it on the next two presentations that we give you in the next couple minutes, how we use that data and how it looks. We can go back and say, okay, yeah, we've confirmed it. It's not just one source, it's multiple sources. That, okay, this is the underserved area, which is what our project with you is all about.
Okay, so right now you have cable and fiber up, and like there's right where your cursor near Blue Hill, see that there's like a little green part there, right there.
Yep.
Or no, down below that. So let's say you want to, right there, see that
Right here?
Right there. Yeah, right there, Jason.
Okay,
Yep.
so you have cable.
I just turned on DSL.
Okay, yeah, but DSL, okay, but for these purposes, when you decide you want to fill in that green gap, for instance.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that happen? Is that, I mean, it seems like if there's service all around it, that's easy. Is that not true?
Well,
So,
it can be, Commissioner. So in this case, this is a great example that you brought up because it's part of the NTIA grant. And so what they're saying is on the NTIA grant, those areas that appear to be underserved, in this space, Blue Hill specifically, through that CCI, they will cover this area, and that grant is specifically for fiber.
Okay, so there's a road, you can't see my cursor, can you?
No.
Okay, see, there's a road that connects one area of
Right.
Fiber to the other. Okay.
Yep, right here.
Yeah, with a lot of residences on it.
Correct.
So how does that get filled in? Is that?
Let me just emphasize, right? We don't have the underlying carrier's network map here. If we did, we could tell you what's really likely going on. In my opinion, based on the fact that this road, if you will, is not served or reported as being servable, this road might be, but in all likelihood, if I highlight this census block to the west, you can see that all you have to do is provide service up in this corner for this whole region to be lit. That's the problem with the 477 modeling. It's likely these down here are also not yet served, but I don't know that. I haven't done that research, but that's what's difficult, is it gives you a misleading representation that this is an island not being served, but it's servable over here and servable over here. Whereas the same may be true for this census block, because the folks up in this corner or even on this edge make this entire geography flagged as being served.
Okay,
That
that's
help?
the point. Yes, that's the point you made before. That's exactly why I'm asking this question is,
Yep.
You know, we also need to look at density, I would assume, to get the most bang for the buck. Okay.
Yeah,
so-
the network design details really help fill in the gaps, and we've done some analysis. I didn't mention it, but we have overlaid, because we do help providers report their deployment data to the FCC. We have to create the census block maps, if you will, that are being submitted, and we know what the networks that are in production look like, and the census block maps overstate their coverage in our opinion. But I mean, maybe we don't have that opinion officially.
Okay, so here's the real reason I'm asking that question. I'm using this as an example to go back to Swans Island. Swans Island had similar, you know, although the service wasn't as good. Does that apply there?
Yes.
It does, okay.
Now, and if you want to pull that up, Jason, just for a quick demo of. census
Did you
block
want me?
data.
Did
Yeah,
you want
census
me to
block
bring it
data
up
on
here?
Swans. Yeah.
Yep. Hang on. See if I can.
I don't mean to go back and forth. I'm just trying to wrap my,
No, while the iron is hot in you know, while we're thinking about it, let's
So
talk about it.
one of the really unique things about Swans Island is that the census block boundaries actually go well into the water, making it an even more difficult picture to paint. If I turn
That's
on
for Tom, that's for Tom's
DSL,
vote.
this drives that message home, I think, very clearly, that it looks like if you follow census block boundaries, you could literally be out here fishing and get DSL. So hopefully that's helpful, but there's no cable or fiber lighting up at all in that region. Did that answer that? Potentially.
yeah, so that's,
There's some VDSL on land. Let's see. It looks like it may be, you know, coded as business available. There are different classes as well. So. Does that answer the question?
yeah.
Or make more questions?
Well, it makes more questions, but it's clearer now.
And we can come back to this, you know, anytime.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yep.
But we did want to give you kind of a background of, you know, some of the mapping that we look at through this project.
All right, so now we're going to go on to Swans Island, the actual project.
Yes, yes.
Should be all yours.
Okay. You see that?
Yes, yeah.
So, and again, this is our first round, right, with reports. So you tell us what you want to see and what you want to change, and we'll adjust. So this first one is, you know, the county contribution requested was 173. The municipal is matching 173. So I'll just work through the report. So from an overview perspective, it's, you know, it's a existing phone company, TDS. I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but they've been around for 100 years, like everybody else. They've had a few different telco properties within Maine. Hamden's another location that they're in. They serve multiple states. Good sized company. Lot of history there. We actually have a couple of folks working here. They used to work at TDS through the years, so they've been around a long time. Do, you know, pretty good deliverable, you know, as most small phone companies. I'll call them small, but they've grown through the years. It's DSL. It's a copper delivery on that island. And so, as we saw before, many of them are served or underserved with DSL services, and we know the problems and challenges with DSL. It's just not reliable. From a project description, 12 months from the time they're really going to secure funding, which we'll talk about in a second, it's full fiber to the premise to every location, just to make that apparent. And let's see, technical capabilities. Oops. We talked about, that it is fiber to the premise to all locations, which is 1 gig symmetrical, by the way, just to give you an idea of bandwidths.
So I don't mean to interrupt, John, but
Yep.
so this project, in a nutshell,
Yes,
would bring fiber to every premise on Swans Island.
with a deliverable of 1 gig. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Symmetrical 1 gig.
And what is that? What is that 100? Is that measurement effective or applicable here, John?
Is what? Well, which one?
Well, you use 100 as an optimum.
Yes. So the current grant rounds are saying they want it built to at least 100 over 100.
So this
And so-
grant will meet that 100 over.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is 10 times that. Yep.
Blows it out of the water, yeah.
I think we talked about it, TDS. There is conversation. Somebody asked a really good question earlier about how does that get served? It is microwave today. There's a conversation about putting in a submarine cable, a fiber submarine cable.
So this project brings 1 gig up and down over microwave, right?
Currently microwave, yeah, with a projection for submarine cable. And Tom, you can probably talk about that better.
Yeah, if you'd like. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Flock. I'm the chair of the Broadband Committee on Swans Island. TDS has currently bringing service to the island via microwave. And then from Swans Island, it's a stepping off point for, I think, 3 other islands. So everything is coming through the microwave at our location. Now we have the opportunity to bring a submarine cable in with the new power cable that's coming across for a very minimal amount of money. And we're proposing to do that too, but they're actually separate projects. So this would actually future-proof the island from a connection to the mainland perspective. And this submarine cable, the rights to use it would be owned by the town of Swans Island. So just to be clear, it's not exactly a part of the current TDS proposal. They are proposing to upgrade their microwave that would then be a sort of a round robin to other locations. Instead of just landing at Bass Harbor as it currently does, it would be 1 additional landing at Stonington to give some sort of resiliency to their microwave system.
So Tom,
yeah,
excuse me, Tom, is the microwave a backup to your submarine?
it's not. The microwave is the only connection at the moment.
But if you go to the submarine connection, can you use the microwave as a backup if somebody runs over the cable and pulls it out?
Yeah, TDS has no plans at the moment to use the fiber optic cable, which I think is very short-sighted. But the town will own the rights to that cable for the foreseeable future and make it available to TDS or any other provider in the future.
So you're gonna continue, even with the submarine, you're gonna continue with microwave service?
TDS will continue with microwave
Okay.
service. That's their plan, yes.
So
Go ahead, sorry.
microwave is consistent enough that it meets the definition of this.
Yeah, it's not only been, quite dependable, but with the upgrades that TDS has planned, including making it 2 landings on the mainland, 1 in Stonington, in addition to the existing one in Bass Harbor, that will give redundancy. So I don't have a real concern about the microwave connection.
And microwave has been serving, the telecom network in America for 50 plus years. It's
Okay.
been around a long time.
And what's the downside to microwave? Is it affected by weather or some things?
The biggest, depending on distance to the, like an island, like some of the challenges that the CCI and TDS have on the islands in Maine. I don't know that Swans has as big an issue because I haven't heard it anyway, but there's some others that the funny part is, Commissioner, is actually the summer months and the sea fog early in the morning at times. Dense stuff like that will cut out a microwave depending on the, because they are kind of line of sight, then you see each other.
Yeah, and high seas, believe it or not, can affect it.
Yeah.
Probably the only other thing I would mention is that the total need for the demand on the island wouldn't be prohibitive of, let's say, a multi or 2 or 3 gig point to point, where fiber has the ability to go to like 10 gig or greater for feeding a much higher density solution. So it's still viable in this application where your density isn't going to be as great as it might be for a large city.
And TDS's plan at the moment is to upgrade immediately to 5 gig, and they have the potential to go to 10 gig if necessary over microwave.
That's part of what I think we've said in the past. When you think about fiber projects, I'll say simply, it's the equipment on the ends, right? You can talk about gig today, you can talk about 100 over 100 a gig, but you change out that equipment and you got 100 gig, right? It's just, there's no limit to what you can do over a fiber network.
Is fiber required? I mean, microwave required direct site? In other words, where's your receiver? I'm in Stockbridge Hill, Tom?
It is, yes. It's on one of the 2 towers that exist there.
And where is it picking up its signal from?
It's, quote, in Gott's Yard somewhere on Bass Harbor.
Bass Harbor? So
how many residents do we have for Swans Island?
We have about 600 locations that have been identified as potential drops for fiber to the premise.
now, do we know how many of these people are willing to sign up and pay service, Tom?
We don't, but what we do know is whether they make the move to fiber or not, TDS plans to maintain the existing copper. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, including tremendous federal grants that they get on an ongoing basis to maintain that copper network. Now, I have to assume that that will change over a period of time. And eventually, I would hope, they would move everybody over to the fiber network, but that's not their initial plan.
So just rough math, that's a little less than $600 a premise. Right?
Well, the total project cost will be coming in, yes.
Yeah, so where does that number land? That seems to me I know when I added cable to my residence in Bar Harbor, it cost me $5,000. That seems.
Where'd you get the 600, Paul? How did
I
you?
just took the total cost of the project, I rounded it, and then divided it by 600.
That's at 1.2 million?
No, that's the 173 times 2.
So that 173 is what we are requesting from the county.
Yeah,
Our
we can
project
jump.
overall is 1.3 million.
Okay, this
Yes.
is the slide that I missed. Okay,
Yeah, there we go. That's the one I was looking at. Yeah.
We hadn't quite got there yet. Yep,
okay. Again, I'm jumping ahead, sorry.
that's okay. That's good. Good questions. Good questions. And just again, I can jump to that right now, but to give you an idea, again, we kind of showed you the mapping, but that's what we kind of look at.
Yeah, and let me comment on this map.
Some of that's overstated. Yeah, sorry, Tom.
More than just overstated. Some of these things just don't exist the way they're depicted.
Right.
That green line that runs through the center of the large part of the island, there is no service there, period.
No.
End of discussion.
No.
So
But it's part of a census block.
Yeah, don't know why that's green, but it is.
Yeah, it's part of a census block, and that's how it gets tagged that way. Right. It's a great example. Right. It's a great example of why we have to dig into the data, and that's what the survey and the speed tests and different data sources that we pulled together to say, okay, and talking to the towns, because they know, and that was part of our push on legislation that's coming out is, our comments and our what we put in for a bill was the local towns, send the money to the local towns because they know what's underserved. So from an overall project perspective, as you said, it's 1.3, 1.4 million. The request is the 173 from the commissioners, and the municipality is actually matching, putting up the same amount of money.
And what does that get Swans Island, that 350,000?
Well, I'll let Tom speak to that, but in a nutshell, what they're going to do next is, they're going after other grants to help, finish the $1 million that's left over.
Yeah, the plan is to go to Connect Maine, and typically, maybe not typically, historically, Connect Maine has funded 75% of grants. So we're asking for 12.5 from the commissioners, 12.5 from the town, and the remaining we feel fairly confident that we can get funding from the state and federal grants that are coming. Just as a little bit of an additional information, the town residents have already approved the expenditure of $1.3 million for this project. We represented that we would pursue as many grants as possible to reduce that expense to the town, but the town has approved $1.3 million. Now we're trying to get the ticket down to something that we can really afford.
So Tom, is it possible for the county to, how do I put this, promise you 173 and then hold it on the condition that Connect Maine comes up with the other 75%?
I would say yes. I think that probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a grant, usually, and I just want to point out, I did the math on the 1.386. That's still, $2,310 and a little change. That's, John, where does that number land? I mean, it seems to me that's still a fairly decent number.
It is when you're building a fiber network like that, commissioners. If you can be between I'll say 1,500 and 3,000. It depends. A lot of it comes into play, topography and size of the network and upstreams and a lot of different stuff. But yeah, it's a good number to be at.
Is there a window that we think the funds or those federal and state grants are really going to start?
The grant round right now for Connect Maine is open, and we are preparing a grant application for that 75%, and that will be submitted in the next couple of weeks. The grant round closes, if I'm not mistaken, the middle to end of March, and then sometime in the late spring or early summer, decisions will be made on that.
Great.
And so just one comment to Commissioner Clark's when he said, pending the Connect Maine. I think one of the things that he pointed out, Commissioner, was that the town has already voted to do this. So whether or not it's Connect Maine funding or they come up with other revenue funding, you're holding it aside for the final financial package, I'll say, or however they decide to final pay for it. Does that make sense? Because it may not be just Connect Maine.
Right. We will go after any opportunities.
Right.
And at the moment, we actually have agreements that are ready to be signed with TDS. The only thing that we're waiting for is one additional town meeting to authorize the selectmen to enter into a long-term agreement with TDS. But the money itself is already approved by the town residents.
You made a statement earlier, and I was talking when I should have been listening, but you said something about the town had already set aside 1.2 million. Did I hear?
We have approved it.
You have
So it may come from bonds. It may you've approved spending it. You haven't figured out how you're going to raise it yet.
That's correct, and that's what we're going through now is how to raise it. And in fact, Sonny Sprague was on the call with us, I know has approached one of the local banks. And if we decided to go that direction, we could fund it through a bank loan.
So this is in case Connect Maine fails to assist. You're prepared to go it alone. Is that what you're saying?
I guess we are. We prefer not to, but
No, I mean, that's what the 1.2 is for. Is to complete this project if you can't get help.
Well, it's an authorization, so that we needed authorization from the residents to spend the money. The plan was to go after as many grants as possible, and what we're asking for today, plus what we will ask from the federal and state through Connect Maine, will be the rest of it. We're hoping not to have to take a bank loan to do this, and that we can do it with grant money. And we
And
know
you-
what's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can come up with a 173 without a bank loan, correct?
I think I don't know. I would have to ask Sonny, but I would imagine that at the very least we take a very small bank loan.
But the point is here, they have not voted on how to fund it. So, you know, we're asking Tom to really speculate because they haven't decided to bond this or borrow on it. You know, they're going down the road of, you know, what the project is and then how to pay for it as a later vote, is my assumption.
Well, it will be up to the commissioners to up to the selectmen to decide
Yeah.
exactly how to fund it.
Yeah.
Okay, so while we're talking about funding, commissioners, we're back to this issue of how much do we appropriate for each town? Swans Island ARP funds were $32,000. They're asking for $150,000 more than that. But at the same time, we've identified 225 this morning that probably isn't going to be used. But that's Swans Island's single assessment is using up this extra, if that be. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that that to me is the fallacy in using the ARP monies from each town in deciding what service they get. And I really still prefer at this point and whatnot to move ahead with those towns that are ready to go. And as we get close to the $5 million ballpark figure, where are we? Who's left out there that needs help, and how many have we served?
Well, my feeling is this, that I agree with you. But here's a project that basically, if you looked at the map, they're not served. And this brings them great service at a cost, you know, at a total cost, not just, you know, the county or the municipalities portion, at a total cost, which I think is reasonable. In fact, 20 years ago, I spent double this, you know, for service that's not this good. So to me, this is an example of what we should be doing. Or not what we should be doing, but it's an example of what the funds, it's why broadband is mentioned in the big art book, I'll call it.
So is Swans Island prepared to ask the commissioners officially to assist them with this project to the tune of $173,000, Tom?
Yeah, in fact, I thought that's what we were doing today.
You thought that's what we were doing? Well, it sounds like maybe we should do that then.
I think the thing that, you know, is impressive too on it is we know we have the buy-in that we want from the town on it, and we even have it as a 1-to-1 with what we'd be contributing. So it definitely has my support.
I feel the same way, you know, especially running these numbers and seeing the maps and, you know, I'm not for writing a check for this amount, but I'm for, you know, us participating at this level when this comes to fruition. And I think that's what John was saying.
Yeah, and if you do that, that will actually then bolster our grant application to Connect Maine as well.
Yeah, in fact, that's what you need for Connect Maine.
Okay, so I think a motion perhaps is in order then to move that we set aside $173,254 of our broadband ARP funds and for the Swans Island project, and forward that to them when and if they're able to get their full funding package together.
And I would second that if you'd throw in as a match to the municipal I mean, our intention is to match the municipal amount. So,
So before we second, what if for some reason they were able to come up with enough funds so they only had to pony up 100,000? Are you saying that's all we would give them and now they're 70,000 short again?
no,
I'd like to be able to tell them right now, no matter, do the best you can with your funding, Tom, and count on us for 173,000. Even if you got your 100%, the town's portion, miraculously covered 100%.
well, my feeling is that we should be sharing in the municipal match, like in the scenario you just brought up, it would still be covered. I mean, they're stepping up at 173 here, and we're stepping up to match them. If they only needed to do 100,000, then they would take a little more and we would take a little less, is my intention. And I think actually their intention, based on those two amounts being equal at this point.
I'm going to withdraw my motion and recraft it this way then. I'm going to move that the county set aside an amount not to exceed $173,254 from their broadband ARP fund to be set aside for the town of Swans Island, and we'd pay them at an amount equal to their participation in their overall broadband project. Does that do what you want? Does that do what you want? Okay, all right. That's the motion, and you're seconding that, Paul?
I am. And Tom, is that what I think that's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think that accomplishes what we need. Our plan is to go for the 75% with Connect Maine.
Yeah.
The fact that the commissioners are willing to kick in half of the 25% that's typically asked for by Connect Maine, and the town the other half of that, I think that exceedingly fair and generous.
Well, and here's my other reason for that is part of the Connect Maine is they want to see that the municipality is in this, and I think that shows it.
Yep.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
great.
And thank you, Tom. This seems like a really good project. Is punching it into a calculator here and looking at this stuff, it seems like a good project.
Thank you very much, everyone, for this. We've been working on this for a long time, and we've had a lot of participation by the residents. I've got a good committee that's helped us along the way, and this is an important milestone for us. So thank you very much.
And John, thank you. I really feel good that we're now making some concrete progress in getting broadband, and I appreciate all the effort that Mission Broadband has brought to this as well.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, so now we have the next Lemoyne project.
I'm going to say good day. So thank you, everyone. And
Thanks, Tom. We'll catch up.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So similar, and again, commissioners, we've had a good conversation so far, and I'm taking up a lot of your time this morning, but I appreciate it. And if you want to see changes, and we can take them offline afterwards, but if you have some different things you want to see on these reports, please just let us know. So Lemoyne, I will jump to a quick caveat. So I'm going to jump down here. This is the one that we're waiting for Spectrum for some language. They did change the current agreement language yesterday. Stu, I think is what we got it. I had a conversation as recently as 8:25 this morning with Spectrum, and they're going to update it some more, Stu, because there's still a kind of a missing piece that I'll talk about. But I do want to, in talking to Scott and the team this week, we said, we should bring this forward. We're doing Swans Island. Let's bring another one forward. We'll talk about the caveat, and you can have the same conversation. We do believe that is forthcoming probably this week, but we do want to step through this to make sure that we're kind of getting the cadence down for these reports. And so in this case, we talked about 72 unserved households, and again, you saw the maps, and we'll get to that as well. Spectrum is the provider in this case, and you know, the ARP funding, that was the one we're talking about. It can do 100/20 scalable to 100/100. And that's what the language that they'll update, hopefully this week. A little bit of data behind it, you know, it's 8.5 miles, 72 households. And they're talking about, again, about a year, which is good timing. I think the last one TDS talked about was a year. It's, you know, it's not for the faint of heart to go climb telephone poles and extend networks. Everybody uses bucket trucks nowadays, but it does take time and weather and everything else. So a year is not unreasonable. And, you know, true greenfield networks are going to take 2 and 3 years at times. It is a hybrid over coax. So what that means is they feed fiber to certain locations, and then from there, they'll put the coax cable out, which is what allows them to kind of expand the network. They do obviously voice and video services as well. Future-proof, you know, it's not fiber to the premise, as we talked about before, but also what we talked about many times in these conversations is, you know, there's immediate need. And this is a very good, you know, solution that's already in place, and you're just going to expand it, and it's serving people today. And they're, you know, we've talked to Stu, but what we hear from Stu is, you know, the city, the town is, you know, the residents are doing well with the spectrum service that they have today. So I throw that in there. Consolidated is also out there, and that's from a DSL standpoint. They don't have fiber to the premise there as well, so limited DSL. We didn't mention this with TDS, but they also participate in the new ACP, which is the low income, and Spectrum, you know, specifically mentions this, that they will have access, you know, for $18 a month, but they also participate in the $30. So if somebody were to has a low income, but they're paying a little bit more, they still will get a $30 credit. So that's good news.
So this right here, this is 72 current households. And I mean, just knowing what I know a little bit about Lemoyne, there's one place where there's going to be 12 new homes. And I think there's another one, if I'm not mistaken. So this number, that's what's on the ground now, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
So
if I can help with that, Commissioner Parity, I presume you're talking about the subdivision that has received conditional approval.
yeah.
That actually would meet the density standard for Spectrum to wire it anyway. Because the line goes right by the proposed entrance road. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, so this project, that's what wasn't clear to me. This project is irrespective of other things that are going on that contractually Spectrum would have to do anyways.
Correct. Yeah, there are parts of town that simply do not have any broadband service, period. And that's what this would the 8.85 miles would expand out to serve those areas. They just can't get it.
So, Stu, is it the distance that drives the cost up? Because we talked about the number of served. What'd you say? It was like 3,500 in Swans Island, and it's $2,000 more in Lemoyne.
Well, it was 23. Let's call it 2350 on Swans, and here it's 56.54.
Yeah, that's twice as much. What's
Let me just do some math.
But the reason for that is this is what I would consider a last mile project or that kind of thing. And that's always going to drive the cost up.
That's correct, Commissioner Parity. And Commissioner, the math I do with the total cost of $220,000 is $3,055 per household.
Well, we were looking at
total project.
We were looking at the total project.
Part of that cost is paid by Spectrum, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just using Apple. We're just trying to use the same yardstick.
Yeah, I'm sorry to use a pomegranate instead of an apple.
But I would think that end of the road is something Swans Island has a lot of out there. I mean, why wouldn't, what's the difference?
Well, the difference is that most of Swans Island was not served. And here, there's less of, I mean, I understand why it costs more here.
Well, I don't.
because-
Can we have, John, can you explain better? What's going on here?
Yeah, so
If I could jump in here real quick, I think you do, I think Stu does have a point. You do kind of have to look at the net cost. Because in the total, you don't know if there was in the total Swans Island, you don't know if there was a provider credit or anything like that, you know, what they
That's true.
currently do. So I think you do look at it as a net cost. It's kind of like buying furniture, you know, you mark it up 70%, go in, mark it down 40, and you know, you still make the money.
John, excuse me, gentlemen. I'd like to hear from somebody that perhaps knows exactly why this is twice as expensive. John, are you that person?
I can try to give it a shot, Commissioner. So I'll refer to this map, right? And kind of a little bit what Stu was saying and Commissioner Parity this is a complete last mile extension. And that is where a lot of the costs come into play, because you start to go into the not only what's on the poles, and in this case, you know, again, something that's hidden that nobody gets to see. TDS owns all the poles on Swans Island. They don't have to pay to be on those poles. They don't have to pay to move everything on those poles. In this case, Spectrum is extending on poles owned by either the power company or the telco company. And then what they have to do is pay them to be on the pole, but also pay them to what they call make ready, which means, okay, if telephone always wants to be on the bottom and it has to be certain height distances, well, if they're a little bit higher, and then, but you gotta, so if you can picture a telephone pole, you've got power at the top, and then there's a neutral, and nobody can go above that because that's, you know, safety. And then you've got, you know, a height distance from the bottom, call it 18 feet. And so you've got this little section of pole that you have to put all the cables on. And if those cables aren't in the right spot, the next guy that comes along and says, hey, I want to put my cable here, they're welcome to, and there are laws and PUC regulations that say, yes, you can do that. And you apply to the phone company to do that make ready work. But what happens is somebody has to go out and move cables, and you pay for that. Whoever's asking to be on the pole has to pay for that. And the other thing they have to pay for is, oh, by the way, that pole isn't structured to take another cable, so we have to replace the pole. And so they end up actually paying for a complete pole replacement. And so all of those hidden costs, you know, when you start to look at networks, are in that nobody sees. You know, they just say, oh, you're going to hang a cable on a pole, and there's engineering behind that. There's, you know, pole replacements. There are make ready costs, a lot of hidden costs that go into it, as well as it is strictly a last mile, you know, and then the equipment that goes on the end. So that definitely drives up a project of this caliber. What's
Thank you,
nice
John.
about this project is the fact that Spectrum is putting in, you know, their portion of it, because it's $400,000 project, and then, you know, call it 200, but you know, they're putting in their portion of it to bring it down. So, okay, they've got skin in the game. The town's got skin in the game, and they're saying, hey, if we could match that, we can get this project done.
Okay,
And we'll be
John,
100% covered.
Yeah, thank you. So Stu, would we have 100 over 100 for the entire town when you completed this project?
If
I
I
can-
talking language, I don't talk very
So
well.
if I
John.
can, Stu, yeah, if I can, Stu, this is, so I don't know if we have it in here, Commissioner, but part of the challenges that we have right here, it's 100 over 20, which is standard, or a standard product for cable TV for Spectrum in the state. And part of that is your technology. So they go off, you know, what can their technology can deliver actually gigabit down and 35 meg up. So this is a package, right? They've said, okay, we'll go with this package. It's 100 over 20. ARP asks it to be 100 over 20, at least 100 over 20. So it matches the ARP rule there, expandable to 100 over 100. And where the expandability is going to come in, and this is what we're asking for in their agreement so that it will match the ARP rules, comes from the technology side. And so the new technology that's coming out, they can upgrade their network and, you know, provide, you know, gigabit over 100 really in the future.
This 407,000 is going to get them 100 over 20.
Correct.
And if they want to go beyond that, it's another project, correct?
Yeah, and they may just, there may be not in this case, you know, that would be a kind of a capital when you think of it from a business perspective, and I can't speak for Spectrum, but if I'm a business, I'm going to look at, I spend capital costs every year, right? So I'm going to go around and look at, you know, where can I go spend capital costs to upgrade this network? And then, you know, available, have gig over 500 and have charged people more money.
So this is a question for Stu or John. The reason I was asking about that subdivision is that subdivision, I guess, was a bad example, but there's because of the density, but there's a lot of raw land in Lemoyne. And, that's quite frankly for sale or on the market, which could potentially be, become business property or residential property. Would this project sort of ready you for service to those areas?
I think I can probably answer that with, it depends, and it would depend on the density within the subdivision. The current agreement with Spectrum requires, I believe, 20 homes per linear strand mile, or 20 potential customers per linear strand mile to force Spectrum to wire it out.
Okay. But
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Paul.
yeah, so looking at this map, I mean, there's something that would go by those large undeveloped parcels, so it would be a density question.
Yeah, I mean, the lines go by everywhere that leads to the undeveloped parcels. The ones on the north side of the map, the density of development in there just is not enough to meet that requirement in the contract.
Stu, did you consciously decide not to go after Connect Maine funding?
We sought Connect Me funding a while back and were turned down. And we didn't have the whole shooting match that's in here. That's all I know about that. We had a consultant that we've been working with, Brian Lippold. I know John knows him fairly well. And the project that we proposed was too rich for their blood.
And then part of that, commissioner, is again those things that kind of go unseen, and this is what makes your project so much better than some of those federal and state projects. It's going to get to underserved, because there's certainly underserved folks. It's just not enough. When you look at, when Connect Maine looks at these projects, it's like, yeah, but I can go over here and do a bigger piece of the pie in 3 different cities and give them underserved better. It doesn't lend itself to nice small projects like this. It can just go out, solve a problem, and be done.
Well, this is getting back to that last mile thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So John, right now, obviously, we've got the areas that are essentially underserved. They don't have any broadband at all. Now we have these other areas that are already developed, but when you look at survey information, are people happy with the speed that they're getting in all these other areas? Except I'm just kind of wondering, is this project just going to help this last mile part, or are we also looking at the broader picture?
I don't know if I fully understand when you say for this specific.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm just thinking as more about how we're using ARP funds, and yeah, there's some areas have decent internet, but maybe the people aren't happy with it because they're having trouble.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, what's the broader picture for Lemoyne, other than just these areas where we know they're out of luck?
Yeah. I'll step back, and it could be a competition, right? So when you think about it out there, it's going to be consolidated right now and Spectrum. And so, the things that will expand a better experience, if you will, if it's going to get fiber there, Spectrum will upgrade eventually, right? They know that even 100 over 20, 100 over 100 is going to limit them in 5 years, right? So we know that the upgrade is going to come. What this will do is provide clients, provide interest to say, okay, you know what, I can expand back to the capital investment, right? I know I've got clients I can expand, and I'm going to get an uptick of X%. So I can expand my network and give them a larger, service in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Wambach, I can speak just as a consumer of it. I am sitting at home in my little office in front of my laptop, and it's a beautiful reception with you and Bucksport and Commissioner Clark and Ellsworth and Commissioner Parity and Mr. Doherty, wherever he is. So I'm very pleased with Spectrum service, and I live on a little subdivision road that is served.
Thank you.
So,
And so I do, I go back to the caveat, just so you know, I did talk to Spectrum this morning that they want to, this currently as it exists does not pass ARP. When they change it, they've added the language to the agreement, so it's 100/20, but they haven't added that it's expandable, and they'll add that language as well, because we know, again, I can sit here from a technology standpoint, and talk to you about the technology, and yes, it will, but that doesn't do any good if Scott says, hey, can we audit that Lemoyne project on ARP? So we need it in writing is what I'm saying, and they're going to put that in writing so that it matches the ARP.
so
Because we know
Joe,
it'll do it. It's not, and the lawyers are not going to put something on there that doesn't exist. Right. So we can trust them. But
so John, this isn't ready for action today by us.
it could be, that's, I guess, up, to you, the commissioners to say, pending that approval. I don't know how you want to vote. Again, I sit back and just give you the data. If you want to wait until it's there, then we come back with you and you can make a decision at that time.
Well, I'm willing to say this, if it meets the ARPA definition, I'm not sure we should be taking action on it prior to that, but I'm in support of this. Scott made a point that we sort of glanced over that, comparing apples and apples, we didn't know what that vendor contribution or whatever. Here, Spectrum is kicking in 187,000. If we pull that out, we're still right in the neighborhood of where Swans was, for the last mile, which is reasonable. So, I would support this. If all the ducks were in a row, I would support up to 110,000 as a match to Lemoyne. But I'm just not sure it's ready for action without us knowing it meets that definition. That's all.
And I can, we can get that and I can bring it back next meeting if that is.
Or might I suggest the commissioners that you could express your support for it contingent upon it meeting the ARP standard? My technology committee and select board both meet on Thursday, and they've been looking for the commitment from the commissioners so that we know that we can move forward with it, I guess is how I would put it.
Yeah. I'm trying to craft something here. Bill, did you have something ready or?
No, I'm just curious on whether or not the board wants to wait for this to be official or whether or not contingent upon that becoming official.
Well, it's sort of a chicken and egg thing, as Stu pointed out. I'm not sure.
Stu, we're not held up by waiting a couple weeks for us to get that and vote then, right?
I don't believe so, and my board will meet in a couple of weeks as well. And perhaps my board will vote to delay signing the contract with Spectrum until we've got the commitment from the commissioners, or
Well,
Paul's very right about the chicken and egg thing.
I don't want that to happen either, because by general consensus, I think you can understand that we are in full support of this.
Yeah.
Up to $110,000, and so well,
up to 100, to me, up to same thing as Swans, up to 110,000 as a municipal match. So if the
Right.
municipality only decided to do 90, we're only 90.
Well, we've already decided to do 110, so.
Yeah.
and then this isn't going to be affected by another grant pending, so it's well, let's not hold it up. We do support this and whatnot. So I'm going to move that the commissioners approve an amount up to $110,000, which matches an amount put in by the town of Lemoyne from our ARP broadband fund to be paid to Lemoyne upon approval. And John, help me with that last bit. Approval of what? What do we,
Upon, oh, it's good language.
Meeting the definition of the hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say upon a finalized definition of opera in the agreement with Lemoyne from Spectrum.
I don't think, Rebecca. Do you have something, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I understand.
Okay, we know what we're voting on. I'm not sure what Rebecca has for language, but it's going to be basically, once this complies with our funding, it's official. That's the motion we're making today. Correct, gentlemen?
Up to
Yes.
up to 110,000 is a municipal match to Lemoyne.
Right.
Second,
Okay,
All those in favor?
aye.
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 And Rebecca, you're all set with that? You got,
Thank you all very much. I will communicate that back to my committees and select board, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Commissioners, thank you. I took a long time this morning. I appreciate your time. This is a good project. And you know, again, as you look over these over the next couple of weeks, if you want to see changes in the reporting, just let us know.
Well, no, it did take time, but you know, this is a lot of dough, so it should take
Yeah.
time.
Yes, yes.
you know, back on that other issue, unlike Swans Island, Lemoyne received 170,000 from ARP and only asking us to pitch in 110 of that. So that's how that whole thing is just out of whack when we're trying to work with that number. So
All right. So next on the agenda is our jail presentation, old jail presentation. Bill?
Good morning. On behalf of the Ellsworth Historical Society, I'd like to introduce Carla Haskell of Design Group Collaborative. She has a bit of a presentation on a short presentation on the history of the building, and also a bit more technical information on some of our plans.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me, and I'm going to share my screen. And this, we've been developing some type of a historic introduction. We are a historic society, and on behalf of the Old Jail Preservation Subcommittee, which was newly formed, and I'm the chair, just want to give a little bit of background to feed into some of the conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago, answer some questions, and really give a little bit more technical information with regard to the project itself and the repairs. And we're going way back because I am a licensed architect. My office, Design Group Collaborative, is right down the street in Church Street. We've been assisting in a pro bono manner with the Historic Society. And we want to sort of understand the relevance of why Ellsworth, as the county seat in Hancock County, was formed. It was first, of course, Castine was the first county seat in 1838. And even today, in the 1800s, it was realized that Ellsworth really was more of the center of commerce, moving from Castine then to Ellsworth. And in 1838, at that very early time, two buildings were built on Bridge Hill, designed by John Moore. These are more colonial style buildings. And those buildings served the county as a courthouse and the old town hall until the 1880s, when the building with the site that we know now was formed. And one of the interesting things, of course, this is a site where now the buildings are privately owned art galleries. There's a Civil War monument here. And it's kind of interesting that, in fact, in the Civil War, just as a fun fact for historic purposes, there were approximately 900 there were 847 male voters in the town of Ellsworth, and they sent 653 soldiers to the Civil War. So that's just kind of an interesting part about Ellsworth and its commitment to the nation, and something to be recognized. Of course, this is the county courthouse that was built in the 1880s. This was a complex, along with its, what I'm calling sort of a small sister, the sheriff's home and jail residence. It was designed by Francis Fassett, who was a very important and popular architect in the 1880s. His forte was what they call a Queen Anne style, which related to a lot of the features that you see in the courthouse in particular, the original courthouse. And the jail was a more subdued, yet had a very respectable presence on the street. Fassett was known, actually, part of what he had, his practice started because there was a fire in downtown Portland, and there were many opportunities for developing this brick style, which was really his featured style, Queen Anne. And this is the old, the original Maine General Hospital, which is still in existence today as Maine Medical Center. You can see the similarities in the style between the two buildings. So Ellsworth, the county put a big investment into this complex at that period of time. And in fact, there were many large buildings in Ellsworth that really had quite a presence. The sheriff, of course, Dorpheus Fields, was the first sheriff to occupy it. You can see his wife. In the 1800s, in rural counties, this mode of having the sheriff and the jail being a combined facility was actually, while not incredibly common, it was a common way for counties to try and save money, essentially. They had both their caretaking staff as well as the cell blocks in one building, facilitating probably, a financial efficacy, making this really happen. And you can see here is the courthouse in all of its glory. It had the finest law library that they speak about. Here's a picture of the courtroom, very, very prestigious building. And of course, it was burned in the 1930s. There was a fire in some of the back rooms. And in fact, during the fire, 5 firemen immediately came to the scene, and 2 died in the fire. And that, I believe, is the only fatalities in the Ellsworth Fire Department was from that fire, which was quite tragic. The county moved pretty quickly then to rebuild. I did want to show the area and its relationship to downtown. You can see the county campus. The old jail is part of what is really a historic district, recognized locally. We have the burial grounds, we have the church, we have the buildings that currently the district attorney's office is in. Of course, the library and the old jail forms this complex along with City Hall. So this is the Ellsworth Historic District. You can see that the old jail is part of this cultural hub with the library, combined with the library. And then this jail, which is sort of on the southern bounds of the county campus, also has ties to the downtown. And that's why we really feel that not only is it proximity to the Union River, to the downtown, this building is really kind of an overlap or an anchor to the downtown experience, or could be. In fact, right now we understand that it's not, but we really see in the vision for where this property could go, real relevance to driving this downtown economy. to get back into the old jail. Of course, the county, there are some remnants of the courthouse as we go down to 1931 with the courthouse that we see today. And you can see some artifacts and remnants of the original courthouse. This is just to understand socially where the building was in the 1970s, of course, was the end of the era of this building. I just think this article is fascinating. It talks about the sheriff reported $1.75 a day was allocated per prisoner for 3 meals. I mean, 1970 doesn't feel that far away to me, but that you really can sort of see the difference in what inflation has cost. What I love about this article is that the sheriff fixed breakfast every day, and his wife handled lunch and supper. And they're quite proud of the meals and the allocation of those funds. On Christmas, inmates received a traditional holiday meal plus cigars and cigarettes. This is the Fitch family, which was one of the last sheriffs to occupy the building as a residence. And of course, their children grew up in the building, and the stories that they can tell, of course, and have told are really just fascinating. But this talks about what that past era of justice and the inmates who were in the cells, of course, were probably known families. There were different relationships that were evocative of that era from the 1880s to 1970. And of course, the 1980s brought the new jail Commissioner Clark added to the history, which is that while this was under construction, it was probably, the county probably realized that the cell block in the old jail was really not appropriate. I'm assuming the building was falling into some disrepair. They moved, actually, the old jail is vacant during construction, and the inmates were moved into an area in the basement of the courthouse that is presently occupied by the sheriff's office until the construction was complete.
Carla, excuse me, I have to correct you on that.
Oh, yes, Bill, please.
There was no, this building that you're looking at now was not even considered until the late 1990s.
Great, I will correct that.
Yeah, there was the location where the sheriff's department is now was being considered as the new jail when they were talking about getting the old jail, moving out of the old jail. And it's interesting that during construction of that process, there was a fire that did considerable damage in the old jail, in the back section, and that necessitated hurrying up the construction of that new jail behind in the rear basement of the courthouse. And they actually moved in there in around 1980, and they occupied that for 20 years as the jail. When they realized that was incomplete, there was only 18 cells in there. And they moved into the new jail in March of 2000.
Thank you, Bill. I actually did need that to get fleshed out, and I appreciate that. That actually adds to the interest in basically that transitional period. And so this probably feeds into then this, the old jail was then vacant. It had the fire. And during that period of time, of course, the old jail building at this point is 100 years old. So we're realizing that the county was probably thinking this building is outliving its intended need as a residence and a jail. And during that period of time, it was probably falling into disrepair, as we're talking about. And in fact, the county was probably thinking of removing the building. I'm sure there was all kinds of options, which is something that you're going through now, trying to figure out facilities, needs, growth. It was a period of growth.
Excuse me, Carol, once again, please.
Yep.
In 1979, they moved out of the old jail into the, I call it the old jail, the old jail, and the new jail. So they moved out of the old jail into the old jail. And
Okay.
there was a group of concerned citizens came to the commissioners and wanted to talk to them about occupying the old jail and restoring it. And there was actually a lease given to them I think the lease was finally given to them in 1979 and 1980, and which they held for 10 years before a deed was given to them in 98. So there was actually the interest in the community for restoring the old jail actually started just about the time, it actually started before they removed the inmates from the old jail into the old jail.
I see. So 1979, 1980 was spurring this. And in fact, this is how the Ellsworth Historical Society formed. I'm assuming interested committees, community members were getting together, coalescing, again, very similar to what's happening now, and becoming interested. And so, in fact, thank you, Bill, for clarifying, there was a lease until the deed was turned over or created, a conditional deed, which is what we've been talking about in 1998. And so finally, the Ellsworth Historical Society is owner of the footprint and the walkway, not the surrounding property. The county still maintains control. And here's for me, this is the key language in the deed that was discussed a couple of weeks ago at the last commissioners meeting. So we're looking at basically the grantee hereby covenants with the grantor that it will keep, use, and maintain the premise in good and reasonable condition, and will use and occupy it for the usual and traditional purposes of conducting a local historical society and museum. Otherwise, it shall revert back to the grantor. And so that's what we're calling a conditional deed. So there's a little bit of a carrot and the stick, trying to basically say from 1998, about 24 years ago, 25, that in fact, you are owners of the building and in charge of keeping it in good and reasonable condition.
And again, Carla,
yep.
Excuse me, I hate to keep interrupting, but
Oh, no, please, Bill.
I think it's important to note that in 1979 and 1980,
yep,
a different board of county commissioners, in deciding to lease this to this group, had the same philosophy that they wanted it preserved as a historical exhibit and museum. And so you have this one board who granted the lease with this mindset, and it's ironic, not ironic, but consistent 10 years later that a different board of commissioners came up with this wording, which mimics what the board in 79 and 80 had for a philosophy on what to do with the building.
Understood. Thank you. And in fact, the Historical Society, so now we're coming to where we're at now. And I just wanted to basically have this conversation, and thank you, Bill, for doing it, because in fact, there are people who were there, and we're treating it as history now, but in fact, as we're coming into recent history, let's face it, the state of the building was not improving greatly. And in fact, some of the repairs that were being made were probably more detrimental than anything else to the historic building itself. And we'll get into some of the particulars. But in 2007, it was identified by Maine Preservation. And I believe Brad Miller from Maine Preservation is here, but it was designated an endangered as a most endangered historic place in Maine. In 2008, the Historic Society listed the building with the Department of Interiors as being one of the few remaining jail and residences in the state. We then see 2006 bricks start coming off of the south wall. There's great concern. 2011, plastic was placed by the Historical Society to basically try to keep the bricks from harming anybody. And really just the Historic Society is fundraising and really struggling with basically a building that that as a group of volunteers, they were not able to raise the funds needed to seriously restore and repair the building. So we're seeing this last effort in 2014, they received a grant, the Historic Society received a grant for basically what's called a conservation assessment program and report. And this basically gives a real grounding to what needs to happen, what priorities need to happen to repair the building. Armed with that information, they hired, and I believe this was also through a grant, and maybe Terry or Bill can elaborate on that. 2016 and 17, architects Gadudi Thomas were hired, and they basically combed through the building, created a set of what we're calling pricing drawings, which is what I've sent the commission to take a look at, which basically lays out for the exterior of the building, which was seen as the most important to get corrected, a plan. And these were sent out in 2017. Knowles Industrials in Portland does a lot of work very similar to this. This is addressing the roof, the gutters, the flashing, the brick walls. And there was an estimate of about $500,000 to do the work. The Historical Society struggled to try and figure out how to raise the funds for this. At that point, I believe they even presented before the commission. Bill, am I right in that?
That's correct. There was a presentation by one of the architects.
So this is, and now in fact in 2020, again, the Historical Society is struggling to figure out what grants are available, what private funds, what community funds can be raised for this. 2020, of course, Bill, I remember sitting on the lawn of the Historical Society on State Street discussing deep into the pandemic, real concerns that the county commissioners and the county sheriff's office was showing about the state of the brick wall. And the county hired head of fine engineering to do a report for that wall. I actually provided in-kind donation and pro bono work to take the report from head of fines, create a set of drawings that could be bid to contractors. And in fact, the Historical Society spends $22,000 to erect that basically what is seen as a netting and fence. And that was designed basically if the wall failed, and that was their mission. If the wall failed, that net has the strength to hold back any of the spillover. And in fact, we realized that at this point in time, either something happens or the building, especially this wall, is going to be under threat of collapse. What you can see though is that, and then in August 2021, the Historical Society basically decides, and Bill, you can step in if you want, but in fact, met with the commissioners and really the Historical Society voted to terminate the board to terminate ownership of the building. And this is where we are today with this concerned group of citizens that recognize that if this is our last ditch effort. So here we are. But the good news is that there is a grant through, and this is basically a list of the meetings that have happened, really not even from the beginning, but really since this community group got seriously interested. And one of the coalescing features of this group coming together and the subcommittee being formed is that there's a Revitalize Me grant, which is part of the Maine Downtown Association, of which Main Street Maine program, of which Ellsworth is a member, has an opportunity to go for this $200,000 grant, which is basically because the building is, and this money is available because this building is listed as a historic place, because it is part of a city that is part of the Downtown Maine Association. And in fact, this grant is meant to really get the ball rolling to see if in fact there is interest in the community to really fulfill all of the needs of the building. We realize are greater than the $200,000. But through this process, and Bill, I believe you were even part of this grant webinar, that was our starting point, December 1st. And we've been meeting weekly and bi-weekly since that point in time to basically find out how much in today's dollars the building project is going to cost. I actually hired a professional cost estimating service to go over the plans and make sure that we understand correctly, that we're not deceiving ourselves with regard to the project. We've been talking about different uses once we get on beyond this urgent need of repairing the exterior, but this grant is really focused on the exterior repairs and providing a safe place. And of course, this is the wall that is of the most urgent need. I did walk around even yesterday. I've have as part of our team an architectural historian who deals with brick specifically. We looked at the condition of the building right now. This is the most urgent need, and a lot of it is because of the valleys that are formed by this gable and the lack of metal flashings, downspouts and gutters, which is really the weak point in any building that's over 100 years old. So all of those do need to be repaired. This is a special feature, of course. I don't know if everybody's been in the cell block itself. It's really quite unique where it's made of these large granite blocks on the first level. The floor is granite. The foundation is granite. The building is actually in very good condition given its age and all of the deferred maintenance that has happened over time. What you see being released in this wall is what they call a 3-width wall brick building. And so we're seeing that outer veneer stone or brick, which is the face layer, is being released. And we are seeing in some areas, especially here, you are starting to see the second width getting affected as well. If you're standing inside the jail, you're not seeing the effects of this yet. Inside the house, now, while we are all aware of the exterior degradation of the building and the deferred maintenance, we are seeing that the Historic Society paid close attention to the interior. In fact, they almost felt like, you know, this is something that our volunteer forces can handle. And so you can see that the building itself is in very good shape. You're not falling through floorboards. This is, you know, was an elegant residence. You can see in the floor plan, so this is the basement level. This is all the granite that is still exposed to view. I've had the privilege and the great experience of crawling through some of these areas while Hedifine made their engineering assessment. You know, there is not a lot of compromise in the foundation. Again, it's in pretty good shape. There are actually some pretty good size rooms in the basement. On the first floor, the two pictures are of the front parlor and the dining room. These rooms are pretty good size. They're about 13 by 16 feet, which are nice usable sizes. This is, of course, the sheriff's office, which has displays, the cell blocks. You can see there's a variety of different sizes in the cell blocks, cells themselves. These were the rear debtors. These were known as the debtors cell blocks. And these have beautiful brick vaulted featured ceilings. And these are all granite with some brick as well. You can see there's a second floor. There's kind of a catwalk, remnants of a catwalk. And then the second floor of the residence as well. There are some wickets that you can see through, and that's what the sheriff used just to monitor. But primarily and there's a, Bill, I can't remember, Bill Fogel, what is this feature called? Or maybe Bill Clark even knows. There's an amazing feature here. That's the wicket.
Yeah.
Where they were able to have a visual connection to the cell block. Of course, all the kids stayed up in the attic spaces were known as some, I believe some of the children had bedrooms up here, and this was their favorite lookout. Of course, they would watch as prisoners were being brought in at night. So there's a lot of stories that this building can tell. The attic, the fourth floor attic, or I guess if you consider the basement included, really has some wonderful spaces. And then I did send to the commissioners the full set of pricing drawings. I didn't send all the specifications, but in fact, if we get the grant, a more rigorous set of specifications will be provided. And these drawings will be updated because as I walked around with the masonry consultant, there are some areas that are in further disrepair. So these drawings from 2017 will be updated, but not a ton. We know that there's degradation here. We know that there's severe degradation here. And in fact, the key to all of this line work basically indicates the level of work that has to happen on the building. And this is just a sample showing, of course, the south wall. And I know if commissioners have any questions with regard to any of the specifics, I'm happy to answer questions about that. So the cost estimator has come up with a construction budget of $856,000. This is including having a general contractor on site and all of the profit and overhead. So this is really looking at the project as a general contractor-led project. At this point in time, we have in-kind labor and donations, of which my services would be part of that during construction administration and bidding. And we're bringing in technical assistance. That's the masonry expertise in order to answer questions as the project goes on. So we're looking at, I'm going to round it up to about $890,000 for the roof, the walls, all sides. We're including a handicap ramp on the sheriff's office side. So that is the whole project that you saw indicated in the drawings. We have right now $50,500 to date. The Ellsworth Historical Society we met with and has approved the fact that they are committed to this project and are investing in it. Heart of Ellsworth has also committed cash to this project. There are various members of the community who are stepping up. We have in-kind labor and donations for $22,000. And so that equals $72,500. At this point in time, we are targeting, and of course, this is all pending. There are two grants that we know we are going to be applying to, and we're researching other grants, but that equals the $200,000 from the Maine Community Foundation, Revitalizing Me grant, and we are putting as pending a Belvedere Historic grant, which is sponsored by Maine Community Foundation. So that basically equals, if we take the grants and we take the cash and the in-kind, that in fact we have an additional need of $593,500. And so I guess I'm leaving it with that because what I want everybody to understand is that we have, and I can take this off screen if that makes sense. We know that we can look at the most urgent need. To me, if you're going to put scaffolding up to deal with, say, just the roof, well, and that scaffolding, as we all know, is not only will we need the county and you as the commissioners and the sheriff's department as our neighbors to agree to a project like that. We're seeing that in fact scaffolding would have to encircle, of course, the building in order to create safe workplace for the workforce. The roof will include taking all the Monson slate off of the roof, taking all the nails, fixing all the sheathing, putting proper underlayment on, making that entire roof watertight. reinstalling the existing Monson slate shingles, of which you can't even find Monson slate shingles anymore. Monson, of course, doesn't even quarry those that slate. So that's pretty special. All of the work that has to included in the masonry is really 100% repointing of the entire wall. And then, of course, the rebuilding efforts. So in a way, we're struggling right now to figure out what phase not only we can afford at this point in time, but what is going to make the most sense. If you scaffold that building, you could use it for the roof, you can use it for the walls. It's about $66,000 just for the scaffolding itself. So of course, I want to use the momentum to just keep this project moving forward. And that's why I'm talking to you right today about the project itself and sent details for that. We are, the subcommittee now is meeting with Maine Community Foundation. We're going to be doing a lot of fundraising for this project and outreach. And we want the entire community to feel like they can take part in this. The historic societies are struggling reaching their community, providing relevant information. And we see this as potentially reaching out to the community in different ways than maybe traditional museums provide. And that would include a lot of outreach, a lot of education. The children are very captivated by this jail. They love walking through the jail. They love finding out about the history of the justice system, criminal justice, the stories. We really feel they are a target audience. We really feel that we're filling a social need by having people understand the culture and history of Hancock County, the culture and history of the justice system in Hancock County. We feel like these stories that this building can tell, and really the shot in the arm that we can give to this downtown that we see is being revitalized. That we can be a part of. And we're asking the county and the county commissioners if you see any possibility of assisting with funding this. We're going to be going to the city of Ellsworth. We're going to be going in front of people and doing, I guess, what is the uncomfortable work of looking for funds to make this project happen. Thank you.
You have anything, Bill, that you want to add right now at this point?
Well, I think the good thing is the building will be maintained as a museum, which I think is the concern of the county. It will be a museum. And I'm glad that the Historical Society is relieved that there are people who are willing to step up and help with the fundraising needs and other things that are involved. So I think it's a kind of a win-win situation.
Bill, it appears that on at least 2 conversations during your meetings with this group and whatnot, that you've indicated that if the building was completely restored and operational, that the Historical Society would not be occupying or maintaining the building. It would be some other entity would have to take over that. Is that correct? Would you explain that?
It's a moving target. In the months that we've been talking, lots of changes have happened, lots of different reconfigurations. Yeah, in the beginning, that was our thought, that we would that possibly another nonprofit would take ownership. But of course, as you know, in recent meetings, it was felt that we needed to stay in, to keep the ownership of the building and keep it as a museum. And all of the plans that are presented here today are to maintain it as a museum, owned by the Ellsworth Historical Society. And as I say, it's been, I mean, we've only been talking since really only been talking since October in an organized fashion. So it's been a lot of changes in a short period of time.
The present funds that they have committed to date, does that include 100% of the Historical Society's present treasury, Bill?
No, we're contributing $35,000 to because there's a cash match, and a lot of the match is being made up of in-kind service. But as you know, of course, you can't. A match has to be at least partly cash. It can't all be in-kind donations and services. So the Historical Society is contributing $35,000.
And that doesn't deplete your treasury.
It does not.
Okay.
And that 35 is in that 220?
Yes.
Well,
Um,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
Carl, as we understand it, in order to qualify for this $200,000 Maine Preservation Grant, they are going to require a 10-year conservation easement on the building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think that is going to give the commissioners pause. And we have not had an opportunity to talk about this, but I need to tell you that I'm concerned that there have been a group of people, different entities, nevertheless, over 40 years now, trying to renovate, restore, and maintain this building, and they've been unsuccessful. And now we have a group in just the last couple of months showing a renewed sense of interest in getting this done. And I'm concerned that a conservation easement that basically says you can't do anything with the building for 10 years could be a serious detriment to the county disposing of the building in a way if it came back to us because this present group simply failed to do as the other groups have in the last 40 years. And I've got to tell you that sitting here today, I cannot in good faith consent to having a restriction placed upon this building that would change the conditions of this, if this building came back to us from what those conditions were when we gave it to this group of conservationists and historical society and whatnot through the lease and through the deed. And that if it came back to us, it should come back to us in the same condition as it was given to them. If for some reason it cannot be restored and is turned back over to the county. And I think it's important for your group and the Historical Society to know from the commissioners whether or not we can concur with this 10-year conservation easement. And I really think that matter needs to be discussed today, and perhaps if we can, some action taken, either affirming or not consenting to that easement. Gentlemen, what do you think?
Well, my feeling is this, that the liability to the county, to me, is unacceptable. Now, I feel there's ways to mitigate that on the part of the Historical Society, but that obviously involves more, more fundraising. That's done elsewhere, through endowments or something to make sure that you can get to that 10-year mark. Sitting here today, I find, and seeing this presentation, I find it not acceptable to me for the county to assume that liability, because we don't know what it is, and it could be very large. Also, you said that we would be part of, everybody sort of glossed over, we would be asked to contribute to this. I'm not ready to say that we would do that. I need to see what the other part of it, I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying that we need to see what the picture has to develop a little more. Is the community really behind this? We've heard that it is, but I don't see the dollars there. So I know this is all premature. I just want to lay it out so that we're not surprising Bill or Carla, 6 months down the road. I just want to be frank with where I sit. And I think that's sort of, hearing what Bill said, I think that's consistent with his thoughts.
Well, before we go to John, on funding, at some point, if this group is as successful as they're hoping to be, I certainly could support finding some funds within the county to help them restore. But again, after over 40 years of failing to do it, with only a couple months of this renewed interest, I would really like to wait and see just how far you're going to get. And if we at some point believe that you're well on the way to success, I think that is a great time to sit down and really consider some serious funding from the county to help you along the way. But that's not going to happen today.
So I'm in agreement with that. The other portion of this is, you've talked about scaffolding in this project and there's pretty tight quarters in there. And is that possible? Can the sheriff's department still operate? Can the jail still operate? Can, I guess there's always ways to do things, but is it possible? We need to hear that.
Yeah, Paul, it is. And I guess I don't want to interrupt your discussion. And I don't know actually if I'm okay to speak. Is it okay for me to
Go right ahead.
speak to that? It is possible. And in fact, we're looking at, as opposed to an adversarial relationship, we see this building as contributing potentially to the county and the needs. We are seeing that there's a potential, there's the lawn areas that were always seen as sacrosanct, but maybe working together with good design intentions, we can look at possible parking on that location. There's going to be restored spaces that could even serve the county's needs within the building. So we're trying to change the discussion to this building not being a burden, but being an asset that we're all, and in the end, very proud to be part of. So the scaffolding, yes, would be during construction, a temporary, would displace some of the cars that particularly bark right up against it. That would be a temporary problem, but I don't see it as a long-term problem. In fact, I see that potentially there's some even benefits in the long run.
Now, I'm going to say this. I hope you succeed. I really do. But part of that success has to be mitigating, some of the liability that the county potentially could have. I think you get that.
Paul, can I ask to define what the liability is so that we can understand?
Yeah, you do this project, it bankrupts you, and then the county gets the building and has to maintain it for the 10 years. That's the liability that I'm seeing.
And it's the fact that we're not going to maintain it to the standard that we probably should in order to keep it from falling into the parking lot. And that's the liability that we had. Same liability we talked about back in 2020 when we had the fencing put up. And if for some reason this group fails, as Paul said, and we're left with that building unable to dispose of it and not wanting to put taxpayer money into it and sitting there watching it crumble, there's a huge liability there in what could potentially happen that we've already talked about over the last couple of years. So yeah, that's the liability of having our hands tied for perhaps 7 or 8 years, 8 or 9 years, waiting to get full authority over how to dispose of the building.
And again, I hope you succeed.
Right. It seems like a chicken and the egg in a little bit, obviously.
It is.
If we get so I'm going to come at it from a glass half full, because I think in any historic restoration, you have to have that vision to be able to sort of convince people like yourselves that this is possible. But certainly if we get this grant, that south wall will be, which we understand is the primary concern, will be addressed. And so you will at least be left with, even if that is all we have, is these funds to do that piece, then you will be left in a better place. But I feel if we get this grant, there's going to be a snowball effect. And actually, we're trying to create that snowball right now. Because what if we don't get the grant? Then we will have to look at other sources. But I think that the plan and the kind of infrastructure with regard to putting this grant together has created us to build infrastructure to think about sustainably activating this building and creating income streams and all of that sort of thing, which we're not going to get into now. But in fact, we do feel that this building could be a much more integral part of the downtown and the county than what we're seeing right now.
So the grant is for 220,000.
There are two grants. These two grants are combined are 220,000.
Yeah. So
we have, in addition, in-kind donations of. It's in-kind and cash right now at 72,500.
okay, so I'm going to use round numbers. The total project is 900,000. The total grant is 300,000. That leaves a gap of around 600,000.
Correct.
Okay, so are you saying that the 300,000 takes care of the south wall, or are you saying that the total project takes care of the south wall?
I'm sorry. The total project is those plans that you saw. A handicap ramp,
Yeah, I get that.
roof replacement, repair, brick wall replacement, and all the various and sundry things that need to happen. Drainage, there is a piece where we're tying into the stormwater drainage. Of course, it's all about water.
Okay.
Replacing the flashings.
So I think what you've said is that the 300,000 would take care of the south wall, and the whole project is the 900,000.
Correct.
So even if you saw the grant, the 300,000 is what ties your hands for 10 years.
That is
Not
correct.
the rest of it.
That is correct.
So I want to be clear, that's the liability that I'm speaking of. So you do the south wall, nothing comes to fruition, the building comes
Right.
back to us, and now we have the liability of maintaining the building. So that's the liability I'm speaking of.
If the Ellsworth Historical Society ends up going bankrupt, and
Yes.
yeah. And that goes
Well,
back to you.
It may not have to go bankrupt, Carl. It could simply fail to raise the necessary funds to meet the $900,000 need, which, you know, within a couple of years, will probably over $1 million before we get this project started and finished. And as far as the south wall, we know that's the worst. I suspect it has something to it as a south facing, you know, where the gets the sun and the.
It has to do with the water, Bill, right? It's really more the water than.
But I got to tell you, our maintenance director, whatnot, who is not an architect, and we're not going to debate this, but he does see other areas on the other side, the west and the north sides. that's
Absolutely.
Showing serious disrepair, and it'll be just, you know, a short time before they're going to look as bad as the south wall if they don't get some necessary attention. So
Absolutely.
you know, I don't want to be adversarial about your plans and whatnot, Carla, but even your handicap ramp on the north side, first of all, you're going to be placing that on land you don't own. Second of all, in looking at your drawings and whatnot, you're going to displace at least 2 potential parking spaces, which we desperately need in that area, by making that ramp come out of the existing entrance to the sheriff's office and heading towards State Street. So that already sets up.
Well, we're seeing one if a sheriff's vehicle is parked right up against the building, it would be basically one space. But you're right. If in fact a car used to park right next to the building in that location, but the benefit, of course, to having there's a bigger benefit that, of course, ADA and accessibility provides. And barriers to entry are what we're trying to dismantle, to create a situation where people are able to come. And obviously, we all understand the need for ADA.
But your ramp takes up 1 parking space, but what's the sense of having a handicap ramp if you don't have a handicap space, you know, accessible to that ramp? And so that takes up the other space, which is available now to all parking. Those are just issues. The backside, there's a platform and a set of stairs on the backside. And that again is on land the Historical Society does not own by deed. And so, I mean, it was going to require some cooperation and understanding as to what that is. So, but I think today it's important that your group and the Historical Society has some definitive answer on whether or not we can accept this liability and the condition of having a 10-year conservation easement. And I think it's important, gentlemen, that we make a decision so that they can consider that as they move forward with their grant funding.
Well, Bill, I have to say, if you decide to, that this is unacceptable, I'm not quite sure if you're tying our hands and setting us up for failure at that point. Does that mean then, because it is a condition and we have to look at state to, the grantors, that in fact, we are able and willing to take on that 10-year commitment, which we as a group are committing. And I don't know if there's anything we can state to allay your fears on that. If you decide to not accept that, I'm almost wondering if you are actually saying we're not allowing you to proceed because it's such a part of it. I feel like we're in a legal conundrum or an honest one.
I know it, and I understand that, but this is very, very unfair to us. This is like I'm granting a family a vehicle so that their son can go to college, and he can only use that to get back and forth to college. I want it back in the summer, and I wanted to minimize the miles he puts on it. And then that spring, when he just get ready to come out, he says, well, I'd like to use it for Yuba because I need the money to get back in college next fall. And I say, no, you can't use it for Yuba. He has to drop out of college because he has no funds to go back to college. And I'm blamed for him not getting into college. And I feel that's what's going on here is that we, the county, gave, and I'm not just this, the three of us. I'm talking about two other complete independent county commissioner, board of county commissioners and whatnot, with the same philosophy. We gave you a building, restore it, maintain it as an exhibit. And if you can't do that, give it back to us so that we'll decide what to do with it. And now that we've given it to you, you want to change the conditions. And that's unacceptable.
Oh, well.
And Carla, you said two things in that statement, which I feel are somewhat contradictory. If you gave an assurance that the liability was not there, then you know what, I'm a supporter. But I mean, that's not just a statement. That means you need to show us that it is that the liability is not there. I want this to succeed. I really do. But as a board that's tasked with spending taxpayer dollars, I can't I can't in good conscience assume that liability. Now I really think there's ways to mitigate that liability, and maybe and to me that's what needs to be worked on. If that liability is not there, I have no problem with this, and I'm not ruling out participating in the future, but you got to remember, you did come to us, not that long ago and say, hey, we're terminating ownership of this property and you're going to get it back. That's not that long ago. We have to make sure that doesn't happen again, because if you do this project, if you do this, you expend this $300,000 and then you do the same thing that you did in August, the county has a liability that, quite frankly, it can't afford.
All right.
That's the word.
So I support, obviously the restoration of the jail. And I think it would be a huge loss if we ended up having to tear it down. I mean, there's not too many buildings with that much character, to be honest, in that area. There's risks with everything, if we tell them no, that loan, we don't like the idea of that grant, because could put us in a bad space. I kind of agree with Carla in that it's dooming them to failure. And I've kind of felt that the whole time. I understand that there's a lot of opinion that it's kind of a complete no-go with that 10-year easement, but to me, it's worth the risk to just support the Historical Society and support the effort and have the county get behind it instead of seeing it in opposition to it, and put our efforts towards making it happen. Right now, I kind of feel like there's a lot of forces within the county that are supporting it to a degree, right? But the problem is it's not going to succeed if we only partially support it. That we need to commit to it and commit to the idea, and give them our support. So for me, I support it, even though, yeah, it's going to be a risk. And yep, it could blow up in our faces and we could end up having the building back, and have to tear it down, quite frankly.
See,
We were almost at that point, 6 months ago, right? So, and I definitely can see how the county could help financially, again, where we have other, maybe the town of Ellsworth or some other places where we do some matching funds. I've been on the board for 3 years, and I've seen those community benefits monies used for all kinds of things that sometimes I've had to bite my lip on. And to me, saving the Historical Society is a big community benefit. So I support it. I'm not saying I'm not committing to any amount of money. We could decide that, nope, you're not going to get a penny. But in general, I support it. And I support the idea of helping them out at some point. But I want to see, for confidence, I need to keep on seeing a real drive for grants and for funding and for the people going out and getting commitments from other entities that we can rely on. But I agree that if the county doesn't show confidence in the project, yeah, it's probably going to fail. So it has my support. That's it.
I'm not sure what action was expected of us today. Again, I do support the project. I just don't. We need to mitigate this risk because I don't think the county can afford it. The ongoing risk. So I think the ball is sort of in the Historical Society's court to say, okay, we know your concerns. This is how we're going to alleviate them. The staging and the stairway and all those things, I think those are operational issues that can be worn out, can be worked out, I should say. So, I don't have big concerns there. It's the long-term liability of it. And if it can be mitigated, it, in my opinion, needs to be mitigated, that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the county, not to the Historical Society. And that risk needs to be mitigated for me to jump in with both feet. I want you to succeed. I really do. I'm not in a place where I can say, I want you to succeed so bad that I'm willing to take that risk. We'll support this grant and we'll assume the risk if you walk away, like you said you were going to in August. So I think it's clear where I stand. I don't mean to belabor it, but I do want you to succeed.
I think it's short-sighted anyways of Maine Preservation to even require a 10-year easement. I understand what they're saying, but if they gave you the 200,000 today without any conditions, you spent the money, didn't raise any more, failed in your effort, gave the building back and you got torn down, then they lost that 200,000. It didn't go to a good purpose. If they gave you the 200,000 with a condition that the building must remain erected for 10 years and you failed, they still lost their 200,000. And they didn't, the easement didn't protect the building from you using the money ineffectively. It's simply punished you for failing in your efforts. So I think it's short-sighted that that's even in there to start with, but
I understand why it's there, you know, because they have a fiduciary responsibility also. They want to see it succeed.
Carla, if you got the $200,000 grant or the 220 maybe, and you didn't succeed initially right in the near future in getting any more, would you do the south side of the building with the existing funds and then raise more money later?
That's correct. I think we're all understanding that the psychological effect that seeing that wall in such disrepair is doing to the community. Certainly the sheriff's department looks at it every day. We all understand that even though, you know, we don't feel that that wall is going to wholeheartedly come down, we know that it's going to signal to everybody that, you know, we are on the right path and we're taking care of something, that we're lifting that burden off of everybody as they see that.
But see, for me, if there was a way to secure that 200,000 from Maine Preservation, in other words, it's like the set aside that we did with broadband this morning and whatnot. They said, okay, we got 200,000. We're gonna hold on for you, and then you went out and took on the task of funding the rest of the project, and then succeeded with the entire 900,000. Well, certainly there would be absolutely no equivocation from the board that we would give you a grant and consent to a 10-year easement. It's the fact that you're going to take the 200,000, do the work, and then if you fail, we're left with and turn the building back. We're left with a building that cannot be disposed of for 8 or 9 years, and that's the problem.
That, I mean, you are stating a worst case situation, but I think again, to change the dynamic, if we get that grant, that is going to do nothing but spur on you yourself, your group will see that in fact, there's going to be a spiraling. And in fact, Scott, I'm going to bring you into this because you were part of one of the meetings where we talked about that. The spillover effect of getting that first grant is huge. That is going to get the ball rolling.
You're right. It is a worst case scenario, but we weren't far from that worst case scenario that long ago. And that's just the scary part for me, I think.
Understood.
And I don't want to belabor this. I think you know where we are. So what do we do, board?
Well, I say we do nothing today. I've got a nasty habit though of saying I told you so. I hope I'm not around someday to say, here we are, I told you so back in 22. You never should have agreed to that 10-year easement.
Well, and I just want to ask Brad Miller, you're on the line. Do you have anything to say about the easement itself and what?
Yeah, so my name is Brad Miller. I'm with Maine Preservation. I'm the preservation manager. The Revitalize Me grant is through the Maine Downtown Center. So it's a separate entity under the Maine Development Foundation. And the grant is through the National Park Service. So it is a federal grant program through the Paul Brune grant program. So this is something that Maine Downtown Center went out and applied for this grant to bring these federal dollars to the state of Maine. And there's only a handful, probably less than a dozen of these grants going across the entire country. So the fact that Maine secured them is awesome. And for preservation grants up to $200,000, again, is another threshold that you don't see across the country. So kind of just explaining the grant itself is transformational. And then to speak to the preservation easement, any dollars that go to preservation projects from the National Park Service do include this 10-year preservation easement. And that's administered through the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, which is the state preservation office. And they're the ones that kind of oversee and maintain that 10-year easement. Those easements are also placed on smaller grant funds that are for $20,000. So if you kind of compare someone who's receiving a $20,000 grant through the National Park Service has that same 10-year easement placed on the property. In this case, you'd be getting $200,000. So it still has, I still understand and respect what the commissioners are saying, but it is a much more substantial amount of money for the same amount of kind of 10-year easement that protects the property. That's kind of the context I can provide. I'm also happy to answer any questions about that. More specifically, Carla, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Thank you.
No, I'm familiar with that. You know, that I understand why that's there. I've seen it in Bar Harbor, for instance.
All right. So I'll be honest, we kind of have to move on for the day.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you coming in and
Well, and I think this was constructive. I think you understand where, you know, where some of us sit, and I know that may be harsh, but really I do think there are ways to mitigate our concerns. I do.
Well, I'd love to talk to you more about that, maybe even privately if we can, because I think we want to calm the conversation down. We want to take as much fear as possible off, and we want to build your confidence. We need you as our partners. We
Well, not
need
just
the
us.
county.
Not just us. There's a lot of other entities that are, you know.
Absolutely, but
wanna see
you're
you succeed.
first. You're not
Well-
only our neighbors, this is a county building. So that's why this is so important. And we do appreciate whatever support you're able to vocalize right now. And we hope we're just going to keep building it.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, because of time, we need to move to our executive session. Paul, can I have you create a motion for us?
So we're the airport treasurer and
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back to them.
Okay,
John, can we take a 10-minute break? It's 11 o'clock.
Not really, because we have a problem with
Release
one of the
5.
participants.
Well,
Oh,
Is it-
okay,
Go.
all right, let's go then.
okay, so we're gonna go to the first item.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay.
move to go into executive session as permitted by MRSA Title I, Section 405(6)(a) to discuss a personnel matter.
Second it.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 John.
I'm gonna move.
Sorry, I just have a couple people in the waiting room that I'm going to admit since
Yeah.
we're in public session.
John's got to preface that, Paul.
All right. Appreciate the time. It's good to see everybody healthy, and we'll catch up shortly and soon. Again, thank you.
All right, we're coming out of an executive session after considering the request to approve the termination of Christopher Sargent of Bucksport as deputy for Hancock County.
I'm gonna move to terminate Christopher Sargent of Bucksport as deputy sheriff of Hancock County effective February 18th, 2022, and wish him the best in the future.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now I think we should take a 10-minute break here. Thank you. We can, there we go, thank you. All right, we're back in session. We're on number 4, airport. Hello, How are you doing today?
Good morning. All's good here.
Good.
Almost afternoon.
Almost afternoon. Yeah, it is almost afternoon. Quite a morning session you had.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we have bid openings to happen, and I'm gonna hand it over to Commissioner Clark, who has the bids.
I'm looking at the bidding tabulation sheets that were given to us. And it dawns on me that we should list, if a bidder bids in one envelope, both machines or both pieces of equipment, that we should list those separately. In case one of his bids is successful and the other one isn't, we don't list them. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yep, so I'm going to open the first bid.
Tell us what they're bidding on there.
And this person is bidding on both pieces of equipment. This is Richie Gray. His bid for the Snowcat is $2,392. His bid for the boat and motor is $1,651.89.
And that's motors plural, right?
Yes.
This bid sheet,
Yep.
Paul, I don't know if you can see, no, you can't see it. There's a bid sheet that they're returning, and it just has item 1 and item 2.
Okay, perfect.
Item 1's the Snowcat, and item 2 is the
Hey,
boat
Bill, can I-
motors.
Bill, can I have you repeat the Snowcat dollar amount again?
The Snowcat, the Bombardier,
Yeah,
$2,392.
okay, thanks.
Next bidder is David Sperling. He only is bidding on the Bombardier, and his bid is $1,580. Next bidder is Michael Miller.
Miller,
Miller. He's only bidding on the boat and motor, and his bid is $250. The next bidder, Walter Moore. Only bidding on the outboard motor, the boat and motor, and his bid is $2,001. The next bidder is William Geel, Geel. He's only bidding on the boat and motor, and his bid is $526.26. The next bidder is Pine State Motors. They're only bidding on the outboard. Their bid is $1,402. Next bidder is Kevin Gay, Gay. Bidding on both pieces of equipment. His first bid for the snow track is $1,157. $1,157. His bid for the outboard is $257.
When you say the outboard, you mean the number, the
Number
second
two,
item?
Item
Oh,
two, item
yeah.
two. The last bidder is Jerry Blackburn.
I think I used to deal with him with old police cruisers.
Jerry is bidding on both. His bid for the snow cap is $875.75. His bid for the outboard motor, boat motor, is $928.
Is that it?
All I have to bid.
Okay, I'm gonna move to award the bid for the Bombardier chassis 321780101 snowcat track machine with backhoe and brush mower to Richie Gray for the amount of $2,392.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm gonna move to award the bid for the 16-foot Fisher Marine boat with two Johnson, two-cycle outboard motors. One's a 25, one's a 6-horse with trailer to Walter Moore for the amount of $2,001.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Now, Richie, Leroy.
Yep.
You need to get hold of these two people, preferably before we adjourn today, confirm that they'll take these. If not, you'll have to come back. We'll have to take the next highest bidder, okay?
Okay, I'll need to get the phone number for Walter Moore.
I'll ask Patrice to get the bids and scan them to you, Leroy, so you can get the information off those.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else, Leroy?
No, that's all I had.
All right, sounds good. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna be easy on you.
All right, next up, treasurer's report.
Yeah, so commissioners, the first one will be presented by myself. And basically is the year-end summary.
Yep.
A lot of information there.
Oh, yeah.
The really good news is the really, really good news, folks, Leroy is off at the airport. Really great opportunities with some funding and the grant reimbursements, as I list out, for him to take a look at a couple of much needed projects. As far as the county did very well. As you see, we kind of reversed our negative fund balance and especially thanks to deeds. We do later on have some transfers coming up for you. The jail, however, probably some point, so the jail, as you see, is almost, what, $450,000 in the hole. It did not have a good year. It was close to, in the end, it was close to $250,000 in the hole, thanks to inmate medical. We all know the increases that we just basically, I mean, we had to do that in order to try and sustain. The reason I say we hold off right now, reason some new jail funding is currently in legislation, hoping that pushes through. That should help. Number two is I was working with Tim originally on a number to submit to DOC for additional funding. Through the whole process, everybody got involved. Shock, not shock. The asks were much higher than the total pot available. So we're basically getting 60 cents on the dollar. So out of a $220,000, it's down to like 160, 170. So that will help address. We can put that directly as revenue towards that, and it will end up towards that negative fund balance, but we're still short. Some quick thoughts. We need to take a look at the cap next year. We may look at, I think I listed out my notes, possibility of transferring another 100,000. But we really need to start taking a look on our own as to making the jail viable on its own. And my concern is simply this. We have a negative $450,000 fund balance currently on the jail. However, on the county side, aside from all the designated fund balances, we have now a 300, it's going to end up right around just a little over 300,000 fund balance. But as you see, as things start to balance out, the jail number, if it continues to go negative, is just going to pull down the positive number as we look at it from an overall perspective. I think the airport does serve in some regards. It helps us, but it's really separate monies. I mean, when it comes down to it, the consideration. You know, I don't know, maybe Commissioner Clark can remember some of the shenanigans that went on between the jail and between the airport and the county, or attempts at it. That's a completely set of books. So while they're doing really great, we have to realize that. So community benefits helps us. Currently, ARP is helping our cash flow. And as I described, as we go through the banking RFPs, hopefully we get a chance to maybe get a little more revenue out of those ARP monies that are just sitting there.
So as I understand it, the airport funds cannot be transferred out. That's correct.
Not without a legitimate, transferred to the county or elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, without a legitimate reason and recording and backup. So for instance, like any increase in the admin fee, that has to be actually justified to the FAA.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that money is never available for county functions.
Scott, we were talking about the books here, though. Back on Department 10, end of the year, expense summary.
Yep.
Why is the sheriff's salary 2,000 more than we budgeted? Why was he paid 2,000 more?
He wasn't paid 2,000 more. There's a lot of those payroll lines are over. One was every 5 or 6 years you have the extra week. And you can only accrue so much between the other years. So it's kind of like it's a year where things come to finalize and then kind of reset. And remember, we had the 5% increase in September, which would increase those numbers as well.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that the statute says the sheriff's salary shall be whatever amount is budgeted. And so we got to remember that, because if in the middle of a budget year, we increase salaries by 5% for all employees, the sheriff's salary does not get affected because his salary is set by the amount that was budgeted. So if we budget, in this case, $78,562, then that number should be divided by 52, and that's what he gets for the year, because that's what the statute says we pay the sheriff. So we got to remember, he doesn't qualify for any increases any more than if we, for some unforsaken reason, unknown reason, that we would decrease salaries, we can't decrease his. His salary by statute is set by whatever amount gets budgeted, approved in the budget. So I just remember.
But my understanding, though, from what Scott just said, that we're not adjusting his salary, it's all the other payroll items, is that correct?
Well, no, his salary was adjusted, but my question would be, so then are you saying that even if the commissioners agree to increase it, that
No, we don't, we can't.
you can't?
No, we couldn't agree to cut it by the budgeted amount.
Right.
We can't agree to increase it by the budget. His salary by statute, if you go in and you look at the statute that talks about the sheriff's salary, it says it shall be whatever amount is approved in the budget. And that is the fixed amount for the year. So we can't adjust his salary for any reason, up or down from that amount. We just need to remember that in the future.
Okay.
You think that 2% amounts to the 5% increase? There's, I mean, that 2,000?
I haven't line itemed or, but I mean, if you wish for me to go in there and take a look and give you an exact answer, I will.
No, I mean, all right. No, it's not worth it. I mean, for whatever reason, it's been increased, it whatnot. It's something we need to just be conscious of in future years.
Anything else you want to bring up, Scott?
Nope, I'll answer any other questions, but I think overall it's really positive news.
No, things are looking good.
Well, my only question you touched on, so I'm fine. So I'm going to move to accept and file the end of year financial reports as presented in the administrator's memo dated February 15th.
Seconded.
Under discussion, Scott, in the sheriff's reserve account, we had budgeted $15,214 and spent 19. How do we do that if that's a fixed amount?
Which line are you talking about?
The sheriff's department 70 reserve accounts, 300 vehicles? I thought we.
Oh, I think you're down under 12, Department 12. Because his numbers are much larger than that.
Wait a minute. Oh, formal, yeah, that's the formal town contracts.
Yep. And in that case, with a formal town contract, that just squares it up. Pat and I have met on finalizing that.
Okay,
But while this is a great segue, because I don't have it prepared, because I was waiting to hear back from Pat. So on Department 10 reserves, we're in agreement that the radios, there's no transfer. You see overall that it's overspent by $4,000, almost $5,000. I'll get to a reason here in just a second. But we're all set on the radios because you're doing the radio project. So there's no transfer there. However, the officer buyout, it should be transferred. I mean, we're going to be facing that. So I can present that later, or we can
transfer to
his G account, to the training account.
We did actually spend that? Is that what you're saying?
We haven't transferred yet. I did not prepare a transfer sheet because I had not finalized the conversation with them on all of them. But he's got that G account that right now has $6,250 in it. And we know that he's probably going to have to be hitting it to get some new people.
Wait a minute, the 18,000 is what we raised in the 21 budget, isn't it?
Yep. Hasn't been transferred yet.
Transferred to where? The G account?
The G account. Yep, that's what we're talking about.
Oh, I see. In other words, because we didn't spend it, we'll put it in the G account.
That's my recommendation. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I got you. Same thing with the radios.
Nope, radios, we're not going to move that. And
What happened? He just lays there and goes into undesignated?
Yep, goes in undesignated. Yep. And here's why. So if you go to vehicles, you see they're overspent by 29,000. But they also got a lot of money. Well, I think they're on the revenue side, they're over collected by like 20 some odd thousand. So in working with Pat, I said this, I don't really feel that the commissioners would have any anxiety over that. It kind of balances out. And especially with not moving the radio money, but we do need to move the buyout money. And then the last one, firearms, is a little overspent. And so there's no movement there.
Okay, so, but those, we don't have transfer sheets for that. You're saying that's what's coming forward.
No, yep, I just kind of was
Yeah,
setting it up for the next one
heads up, yeah.
while we're talking about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the question that was presented, yeah. But I did want to point out though that the vehicles, and you'll see I pointed that out in my notes, the vehicles are overspent.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
Good.
Has that motion been acted on?
No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we've got our transfer sheets. Paul, are you ready to make some motions?
Yes, I'm gonna move to approve the transfer sheets for the general fund and airport as presented. So I'm taking them all together.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Geez, I had Monica all prepped to.
Well, that's basically transfers for what we've already done.
Yeah, like we just talked about. Yep.
Yes.
Well, no, you haven't already done it.
Well,
We're going to do it.
yes.
We actually did it right this time.
Yeah,
Yeah, you actually got permission before you.
Yeah, so probably while we're at it, if you don't mind, I'm gonna move the 18,000 so I don't forget. And I'll bring you a transfer sheet next meeting to make that
Yeah.
happen.
to approve.
Cool. Officially, right. Yeah.
All right, so Bill, do you have the banking RFP?
Yes, I do. I have those entities, those banks that responded to the request for proposals. And as I list these, and if there's anybody listening who's made a proposal and I didn't list them, get hold of the our finance office immediately and find out where your bid is. The bids are closed though, we're not accepting anymore, but if your bid should have gotten here and didn't, we'll certainly, finance office will be considerate in what to do with that.
And procedurally, before we open them, you're gonna open them. You're gonna say who they're
No,
from.
I'm not gonna open them. There is too much information in there for them to consider. The criteria for that is not as objective as a bid. So
Yeah,
all I'm going to do is say these institutions have submitted a request for, submitted a proposal. Finance office is going to go down and review all those, come back to us with a recommendation on if we want to go with any of these institutions. That's the process.
yeah, so that was my exact point, and that will be done at a future meeting.
If we make a change in our bank, then that recommendation would come from finance based upon these proposals.
At a future meeting.
Right, they may elect to stay with who we're with.
All right.
So if you're ready, Bangor Savings responded, Bar Harbor Bank and Trust responded, Camden National, First National Bank of Bar Harbor, Franklin Savings Bank, Key Bank, Machias Savings, Maine Savings Federal Credit Union, Seaboard Federal Credit Union, TD Bank North Ellsworth, and Northeast Bank in Lewiston.
And
Those
Monica,
11 people are listed here as having responded to our request for proposal. And again, it'll be reviewed. If there's a recommendation to come from us, there's a recommendation to change from our existing thing, we'll make that proposal at a later date.
Scott, did you have something to say?
I did, yeah, I was just curious because as I was looking down through the list, Monica, we did get RFPs from all of these individuals, 11, or just the ones with dates?
We did not receive from all of them. We did not receive from Franklin Savings.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I didn't see the third category. Ah,
Yeah, well, yeah, that's all right. We'll clean that up next time.
Those 11 were sent proposals.
Right.
Franklin Savings, Key Bank, Maine Savings, Seaboard, and did not
Send packets.
respond. 1, 2, 3. There was 4 of them that didn't respond out of the 11.
All right.
Rebecca, do you have a copy of this? Yeah, so you can get that in a minute.
All right. Okay. So now we're gonna move to our next executive session,
Well.
right? Oh, wait. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I forgot. We had our additions.
Yep.
Before you do, Leroy's back, and I think I saw a note
Yeah.
from him.
All right, Leroy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I talked to Gray, and yes, he'll take it. I still have not got the information for more yet, so Gray, we can move forward with.
All right, thank you. All right, so first Paul, we've got our
Work from home.
probate. Yep, work from home.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to allow probate deputy Kathy, I'm gonna butcher Zenier, is that right?
Zareen,
To work from home as requested and recommended from March 14th, 2021 through April 15th, 2022. And that should be March 14th, 2022.
Seconded. Do we have any discussion? Is there anything you need to add, Rebecca?
No, there's nothing I need to add. I think everything's right there in the memo.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna call the vote. Do you have anything, Bill, before I call the vote?
I'm fine.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
And this next one, the new hire part-time clerk, that's a request to advertise?
So it's been advertised.
Okay,
I see Ada Wentworth Taffy is in the meeting. I don't know if she wants to speak to this or if you want me to answer. It's been advertised. This is an applicant that Register Willer has
okay,
chosen.
so this came in late, so I'm trying to figure out, is that person named here in one of these emails?
I'm not sure what is in the emails, but I know the name is Liliana Nevels.
Is that the ex-dispatcher?
Yep.
Do you remember that gentleman that we approved the termination of resignation from Liliana?
Yeah, so
In fact, do you know the rate?
I don't, I think it's not off the top of my head, but it's whatever that 6A is. I think it's 1596, something like that.
The
But
step
it's-
is what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, the part-time rate.
does this have to be acted on today?
There's not commissioners.
Well, no, here's why
You're
I'm asking.
halfway through it, but
No, here's why. I mean, this person is ready to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess before I can make a motion, I need some information. It's Liliana, what's her last name?
Nevels.
Nevels?
Yes, 2 L's, I think, Nevells. Yep.
Of where?
I'm not sure. I think Blue Hill.
Okay, I'll leave that part out. As part-time probate clerk at step what?
6A. And then you'll just want the effective date,
Yeah, that's exactly.
which should be this Saturday, which should be February 19th.
effective February 19th. Okay, I'm ready to take a stab at it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, move to hire Liliana Nevels as part-time probate clerk at step 6A effective February 19th, 2022 as requested.
Second,
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 You know, real quickly though, I think you can hear the frustration in Paul's comments. Department heads, come on, we got to make this system a little cleaner. We'd like to have this information in advance. You know, if you woke up this morning and said, I think I'll hire Liliana or whatnot, maybe you ought to look at your management style. We have to approve employment. We don't challenge your decisions, but you got to work with us a little bit here.
Well, and really it's not only unfair to the commission, it's really unfair to Rebecca and Scott. You know, we should have deadlines for submission and, you know, adhere to them. And you know, I've said it in the past, I'm not going to be belabor it, but we need to start, you know, it's tough, you know, 10 minutes before a meeting to get a memo or an email that you can only partially go through. And it's, anyways, I've belabored it.
All right. So now we still need to go into executive session for an employee evaluation.
Wait a second, did we vote on that one?
I thought we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
So now we have the Sealander the ADA ramp.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
See, here's the problem, Sean. Late submissions.
Yeah, and not only that, it's unfair to the chair. Well, you know.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I do see Dennis on here, but I think the letter is pretty straightforward. I'm looking for it as I yak. I want to say it was 49,000 is the not to exceed. Kind of takes us to the next level and finishing this up to get bids out by April 1st, Dennis. Is that correct?
Well,
yeah, definitely the next step for us.
well, that step goes right into construction, correct? Says here, we will provide technical services during construction, such as requisition review and approval, submittal review and approval, responding to contractor requests, information, so on and so forth. So this should be the total cost of Sealander right through the completion of the project, right, Dennis?
Yes, I think you're exactly right. Yes.
Okay.
He's,
I know you probably aren't going to be able to pull this out of your ear, Dennis, but so how does this compare to what Sealander charged when we did the RCC for their involvement?
I think it's pretty comparable. The way they set up their fee schedule is usually based on the cost of the job. So he doesn't really have a fixed number right now. So I think that's why he's saying you do a time and material. And 49, he's kind of thrown out like $500,000 as a possible budget figure. And so I'm sure that's kind of where he's based it. So he'll charge us time and material not to exceed that number because he doesn't have a fixed percentage that he could go by.
Well, did you gentlemen get a copy of his letter?
Yeah.
I did, and I quite frankly, by the time I printed it, and I should have read it in our 10-minute break, but I forgot to.
Well,
So,
I tell you, when you get down and look at it, the work will be based on the approved conceptual design attached. So it sounds to me like this might be a two-prong motion or something here, because we got to approve this conceptual drawing and then approve his expenses for it, because if we alter this design, he has the ability under this letter to alter his rate.
Well, I would say this too, keep in mind, if we're not feeling comfortable with it, he said he was going to go forward with keeping on to not slow things down. So if we're worried about the particulars of that we're really approving a conceptual design, maybe today isn't the day to take the action.
Well,
remember we talked last time, the design, we had a problem with that curb next to handicap parking. Remember the curb to the left of that?
Yeah.
That is still on the conceptual drawing. I don't see there's been a change in.
Yeah, I noticed it too.
We really thought we didn't tell him what to do, but we really told him we were concerned about that drop off and the cribbing. And
okay, so I have a question. The first is this letter, the February 1st letter, that is a proposal. That's the cover letter for the proposal. And is Dennis recommending that, do we have a recommendation from Dennis?
Yeah, Commissioner, I think
Move
it's
forward.
the discrepancies we're talking, we brought out a couple of design features we'd like to have addressed. And have options for, like the foyer and the glass at the sheriff's front. And that dead area that Commissioner Clark had mentioned that's used to have a shrub in it now, and so he's gonna make sure those things are addressed in his design. And I think that's where he's looking for a little bit of latitude with respect to the approval of the design. I think he's had a tacit approval of the overall design and concept to this point, and is just, I think, making provisions so that work, it won't come as a surprise to anyone when those details are added.
Okay, so it sounds like we can move ahead with this, but we're not ready to just because we haven't studied it, to approve the final design. So I could just include that in my motion.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah. Pending
sound
approval.
fair?
Yeah, I think so.
well, so we'd proceed on the premise that no matter what we do with this design, it's not going to substantially alter it to the point where he's going to change his price. Is that right, Dennis?
I think so, yeah. I mean, and if we always have the option to pull the plug anytime we want anyway. Which is the beauty of this type of arrangement.
It sounds to me like his 49,000 is based on hourly work anyways.
It is.
It says hourly rates remain the same as previously submitted, so.
Yeah.
So up to hourly rates up to 49,000?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, it's hourly up to, and he gives that, I think that figure he came to was, again, as just a ballpark, a place to start.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this out, and Dennis, you can suggest any changes. I'm going to move to accept the proposal from Sealander Architects as outlined in his letter dated, as outlined in their letter dated February 1, 2022, not to exceed $49,000 as recommended, and acknowledge that this action is not final approval for the project.
Final approval of the design.
Of the final approval of the design.
And I can second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I hesitated on aye because I just wanted to make sure that Dennis was in agreement.
Yes.
Scott was in agreement. Okay.
You know, it just dawns on me, Dennis, that they're going to tear up that nice job you did on the heated steps coming out of
Yeah,
the east entrance there.
well, that's another one of the design features that I talked to him about was he's planning on electric snow melt throughout this place, and we have an abundance of hydronic heat available, as you know. And so I think from our standpoint, it makes a lot more sense to heat those walkways with water rather than electricity.
You concur?
He acknowledges the potential either way, yes.
Okay. Okay. Gentlemen, I need for you to know that at 1:45, I have a forum at City Hall. Chamber of Commerce is asking me to sit on with representing the board before a group of, so I don't know if it's class people. Do you know what that is, Scott? That, no, anyways, so I need to get out of here pretty quick.
All right,
Okay.
well, I think now we're just ready to go into executive session.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'm gonna move to go in executive session as permitted by MRSA Title I, Section 4056A for an exempt employee evaluation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we're exiting the executive session. Nothing to report. All right, gentlemen, let's talk about our March meeting dates.
That's been set for March 1st at 8:30. I have an appointment in Bangor I can't get out of at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it'd be ineffective for me to try to attend on the road and whatnot. I'd like to know if we could either do it in the afternoon of March 1st or on Wednesday, March 2nd.
I'm good with it being on March 2nd. I have already
Are
put
you
in.
okay with that?
Yep,
Yep, I answered the chair on that, didn't I?
yep, you did.
Good.
So March 2nd at our normal 8:30 time frame.
Good.
And then we'll just get back to our regular schedule, obviously, for the second meeting. Any questions or anything on that? All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second the
All right.
motion to adjourn?
Who's made it?
Let's vote.
The vote?
Call a vote.
All right,
Aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, folks.
Bye.
Thank you.